Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. At long last, it is my absolute pleasure to be able to release our episode with Lars Axelsson, aka the Swedish Fire Nerd. Lars trains instructors from all over the world, and his entire approach is based on firefighting training that is based entirely on evidence and best practices. You can go onto his YouTube page, onto his website, which again will include in the links, and he goes about dispelling so many of the myths. He's got some incredible top tips and demonstrations on live fire training facilities. He also has a series of digital training materials. You can see them online, and he has a podcast of his own as well. In our conversation today, it's a big one. We cover a lot of ground. We pretty much traverse an entire landscape. We go through some mutual friends, actually. Ed Harton, Catherine Lamb, a few others get a shout out in there. We talk about understanding versus remembering and how to get yourself into that deeper layer of learning. Talk about Lars' early days. So people may not be familiar. Lars has retired or left the fire and rescue service and is still incredibly influential within the sector. So we talk about where he joined, why he left. There's a beautiful part in here when he speaks about those first moments with students or instructors about how good do you want to be at the job and whose responsibility is it. All of his materials are great examples of the opportunities that are out there. The knowledge, the information has never been as accessible as it is today. But you've got to put the work in. You've got to want it. So again, we cover so much today. You will probably want to come back and revisit this one a few times. And if you want to go deeper down the rabbit hole, you can head over to SwedishFireNerd.com. Please also go and check out Lars's YouTube page. That's at Swedish Fire Nerd. There's a whole 61 videos. There's some lives. There's some good playlists in there with tactics. And also a series of great conversations on there as well. So you can get in contact with him through his website. And you'll also find him on LinkedIn. That is Lars, L-A-R-S, Axelsson, Alpha, X-Ray, Echo, Lima, Sierra, Sierra, Oscar, November, Chief Fire Nerd at the Swedish Fire Nerd. We've had this one in the chamber for a little while. For better or worse, we've gotten so busy with the podcast, recording many times per week, which is kind of crazy because we only release one episode a week, but we are trying to ramp that up. We're trying to work smarter, not just harder all the time. So thank you for hanging in there with us. Thank you for your continued support. Again, if you want to jump into our archives, you can see a link in the notes that will give you access to many documents, videos, and all of our archived episodes which aren't available on public platforms. So without further ado, I wish you well as you head into this forest of knowledge, and there's many nuggets in there that Lars has left for you and us to upskill yourself, to develop yourself, to widen your lens of looking at how we do what we do, why we do it, and also some comparisons from across the world, the pros, the cons, and how we achieve similar in a different way at different fire and rescue services from different methodologies. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, Lars Axelsson. Hey, brother. How are you, my man?
Good. Nice to meet you, Pete.
Oh, brother, it's such a pleasure to be able to get a conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry it's taken so long. The life cycle of guests sometimes with my life and kids and their own lives and everyone else like that is sometimes can be a very long one. So I'm really appreciative of you able to get some time together.
No, I fully understand. I'm worried you're stretching yourself too thin, Pete.
Mate, so I'm a recovered addict. So it's the story of my life. I'm always trying and strike that balance because I know that I will always be addicted to something and I always push myself into stuff. So I always have to try and get that self-awareness, which I find always so incredibly difficult. I don't know what you're like with that because you're an incredibly busy man. I know you've got family and stuff.
Well, I think everyone struggles with balance. I think it's impossible not to. It's just that we got different balances.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
The only thing I typically never talk about or try not to talk about is sort of a specific incident if I know the details.
Of
like,
course.
For instance, Grenfell Tower.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't talk about that because I realize that whatever I say might hurt people. It might hurt the fire service. It might hurt this legal replications.
It's super emotive stuff, isn't it? And also, we weren't fucking there. So, everyone's an expert in retrospect on, oh, fucking hell, why did Lars do that? Oh, it's just stupid, ridiculous. And where was he trained? And all that sort of shit. And you're like, well, you know what? No. Your decision probably wouldn't have been too far off theirs. It might have had a different logic path to it. But yeah, no, 100%, brother. So we'll stay clear of those bits.
I think it's important. I mean, me and Ed Harding did he does 10 minutes trainings where we sort of use an incident as a starting ground for discussion. Mm-hmm. But we don't really go into the right and the wrong of what the people are doing. We just go into looking at, oh, that's a good video from a fire. What could be a reason for this and this? In that sense, we don't even have to know what the actual outcome was of that fire. Yeah. We just use it as a base for discussion. Yeah. In that case, I think it's very possible.
I think that's super healthy. Are you aware of the work of Catherine Lamb, Effective Command?
Yeah, but I not the actual work, but I've met Catherine a lot of times, and I really like her.
Have you?
And I listened to the podcast you had with her because I met her at IFIW and stuff like that. She's super cool.
Supposed to be there last year. God, and this is one of the frustrations, and it's something we'll come on to asking you about in a sec, is about being trapped by the job that you do, which sounds like a horrible thing, but it's like there's so much stuff I want to do outside of my role, and you just feel like, shit, I just can't make time for this sort of stuff.
Oh, you got a classical FOMO, fire nerd FOMO.
Fuck yeah. But you can never complete firefighting. This is what I said. Like, people that that sort of stay in a job for ages. I mean, how long did you actually spend in? So you were 10 years in the operational services.
12 years professional. Yeah.
Okay. So what age were you when you kind of came in? Because the strong facial hair is a little bit elusive sometimes. I know friends that have had their beard shaved off and they're like, shit, I'm 10 years younger. So how old are you when you joined? Yeah. In other news, this episode is brought to you in partnership with MSA Safety. Today we have them to thank for the improved firefighter safety through connectivity in their brand new connected firefighter system. At the center of the connected firefighter platform is the MSA M1 SCBA with telemetry. You can view battery life, air pressure, and estimated time remaining either independently on the M1 itself or from the Luna connected device screen. Also, still with the air status, alarm information, search status, and all of this provided to the incident command for confident decision making during the scene. That integrates straight in with the Luna system, which is a wireless all-in-one device creating an independent search and rescue network, providing edge detection, enhanced personal thermal imaging, while simplifying post-scene reporting and data retention. One of the key parts of the Luna is their FAST system, the Firefighting Assisting Search Technology. This combines directional and distance information with thermal imaging to help find separated teammates and decrease response time. It actually connects you to the other crews in the vicinity for a unified search during the time of mutual aid by instantly notifying the network of Luna devices when there is a downed crew member, allowing for a prompt search and rescue. All of this then plugs into the FireGrid system for cloud-based connectivity, real-time information, and data-driven decisions for the incident commander. It enables you to see the exact location of your firefighters on the scene. And it doesn't require you to be sat on the station. The MSA Hub then provides a wireless gateway straight to the cloud, enabling wireless on-scene data for local and remote incident command for additional eyes on the scene. MSA are truly taking massive strides in the future of improved firefighter safety through connectivity. MSA is dedicated to increasing safety in the fire service through technological advancements. Various feature enhancements, new products, partnerships, and integrations will provide additional capabilities readily accessible by products, software, and services in the brand new MSA Connected Firefighter platform. Now back to the show.
first contact I had with the fire service was I did military fire service.
Okay.
Which wasn't military; it was civilian in Sweden back then. So it was just I was an airport fire at a civilian fire department. Civilian fire airport.
Did you kind of fall into that? Did you have a friend in it? Did you?
It was actually an older friend who said I got the job here through when I did the military service, and it was super easy, just PlayStation, and you work 1 week, free off another work. It had nothing to do with like, I want to do something for society. It was all about you get sleeping more, you get sleep in the mornings, you work for 1 week, and just play PlayStation at the basically the firehouse in the airport. So I did that for 10 months. I didn't even recognize that you could work in the fire service after that, because there was no connection. It was just a bunch of 18-year-old dudes in
fucking about
a military barrack. So it was no real connection. So it was actually the first. Because I didn't have any connection before that either. My father was he drove an ambulance or ride an ambulance, so there's some connection to that field, but that wasn't any clear connection to the fire service either. So anyway, when I came out of that military service, which was 10 months, I went gutting fish in Norway, which is a popular thing that students do in Sweden, because they bit
of cash in hand, money over the summer or whatever.
Yeah, so like for 5 months I was gutting fish in Norway, and then I heard a guy who I did the military service with, he got into a new training program for firefighters in Sweden. It was a 2-year program, which is the first they launched they changed the system for how to become a firefighter basically. And I said, well, can you be a firefighter? That sounds awesome. Can you continue doing this? Because I was always intent on becoming an engineer of some sort.
Okay.
But I realized I don't want to sit on my ass. So I just like, that sounds awesome. I applied, got into that one, and it sort of just happened.
What was it about the engineering stuff that attracted you? Because from what I see, and obviously I look at your YouTube channel and stuff like that, you are clearly very passionate, but you're a very detail-orientated individual. Like you're passionate to your kinesthetic mindset. You like to understand and see and touch and know why something's doing what it's doing, not just like with the greatest respect. And we see a lot of this in brigades and services. It's just, it just fucking does the thing, and you're like, but you don't. If you don't understand how, then you've not got a real conceptual understanding of what to do.
Yeah, I can't remember stuff. I don't think I have a real good memory, but I have, like, if I understand something, it's hard to not understand it. Like It's like remembering something is hard, but not understanding something is not something you do. Like when you understand it, you remember it. Like you just get it. So I always find the short path to learning was understanding it, which is like the deeper level, of course, remembering stuff. So that just came natural to me. But then I think it's just curiosity. I've always been curious about how things work.
Yeah.
Like, and that goes for both like mechanical things, but also non-mechanical things. Like both, like
the physics of life.
Yeah,
I first had it, and I constantly bore people with the podcast. But it's like my dad was run a building firm for 50-something years, and I always used to go places with him, and we'd talk about pressure and out and fulcrum and angles, and he'd, when we'd be out walking the dog, he'd tell me how a dam was built. And he'd tell me why the weir in a river does this and how, and we'd go and see windmills and shit. Do you know what I mean? And I'd be like, wow, and we'd go to the airport. When you used to go and see people off at the airport, you'd just take them to the airport and wave goodbye. And he'd talk to me about aeroplanes and flight and pitot tubes. And I'd be like, I owe a lot to him for why I am so curious. Because you say the word physics and people go, oh, fucking hell, that's a bit deep. But well, everything is physics. Whether you like it or you don't like it, everything you're doing right now, you are interacting with it indefinitely. It's not like a religion. Yeah. It's just a thing that's happening everywhere all around you. So, but that can be very exhausting for people. And I do feel like this, and I feel like this as a podcaster, like you exhaust people, not you, but I exhaust people in conversations at times because it's hard to have a shallow sounds horrible. Like it's hard to have a shallow conversation because I end up just my desire to go deep all the time, and that can be very. Have you ever had that? Do you have that? Because that can be exhausting for my family as well. I don't know what it's like for you.
Well, I think it's controlled. No, but
Know your audience.
Well, I guess it's know your audience. I mean, it different people, different levels of engagements and so on. But yeah, I remember one of the earliest occasions when I really started understanding that I was a little bit different in that sense.
Okay.
I remember we got a scholarship, like a small, actually like £1,000 to do something. Me and some friends, like 4 friends, when we just started fire service because we did something well, and we got some money to go. And basically, it was a beer drinking trip. Okay. But to do the beer drinking trip, you had to go to some visit some fire related stuff. Yeah. So one thing we visited was the security center of the bridge between Malmö and Copenhagen. It's a long bridge, and there was a security head there. And we sort of looked at what happens if there's car fire on the bridge and so on. And my friends just wanted to get through to that visit to go to Copenhagen and drink beer. And I was like asking questions, how many ships are there under the bridge every day, and what happens if this? And they would go like, Lars, stop asking questions. And I was like, don't you want to know this? We're like a really cool place.
Yeah.
I
spend ages at risk visits when we go to schools and factories and I'm like, because I used to work in a fast moving consumer goods company where we made cat and dog food and shit, and like they had the old steam cookers, and then we had the ovens, and then we had the high centrifugal blades, and I was like, wow, because engineering, and I think about this with agriculture. I know we're going off on a tangent here. I'll bring us back, but it's like farming and agriculture. Fucking hell, engineering in that is absolutely incredible. Because if it wasn't, and I'm probably blowing smoke up your ass, if it wasn't for people like you or other people with an engineering drive, imagine our inability to feed the population of the world now, because it was knuckle dragging farmers probably fucking about with horses and and someone like you stood at the edge of the field for days, and they're like, you can do this better. There's a fucking way to. So what are you trying to achieve? So you're trying to dig a trench. Okay, I can do a thing with that. And some of the stuff you see in agriculture is absolutely fascinating. So you did 12 years.
I would say farmers seems to be very ingenuitive.
Oh shit, yeah, they can get something done. Yeah, and I think firefighters have adopted a bit of that. I think we've actually been suffocated a bit, maybe, in our freedom of thought over the last decade or so. And I'd love your thoughts on that. But yeah, farmers. Because there's no other option. You see a farmer, on his hundreds of acres, and it's a Sunday morning. He's got to get it done. And no one is coming. Yeah, no one else is coming to do it. So they will mackle and bastardize and make the thing work. And I think that's incredible. And that's what we want in firefighters. We want problem solving. Not people to just be self-deploying and doing dangerous shit all over the place. But there's almost a change partially in desire, and also this thing like procedure versus guidance, which I'd maybe love to go into as our conversation. But just to circle back for a second. So you did 12 years, but you kind of jumped through. You did firefighter, crew commander, battalion chief. What was your experience of those 12 years?
Well, I did so many different experiences at different levels. I mean, I ended up, of course, leaving. So that's one of the outcomes. But I mean, there's a lot of reasons for me leaving and so on. But my first impression of the fire service was it was awesome. This is the dream job, sort of, because there was so many bits and features that had nothing to do with the job. It was great working hours. I could go with my mates.
Yeah.
We had 24-hour shifts most of the time, and I had free time, and it wasn't until like 6 or 7 years into it, I remember that I was going that I actually got into the job. In that sense, because I think one of the reasons for me getting into the job is that I thought I knew basically the job, and it wasn't until I didn't understand the job that I really got into the job. Because there was basically, we were taught indirectly that Sweden is the best in the world. We are the shit. And if you know the Swedish textbooks and know everything the instructors are saying, you're basically the shit.
Yeah.
And why would you dig any deeper than if you're at the top?
Right. So there'd been a rest on their laurels aspect of, we've done so much work on the shoulders of giants in the past. Now, fuck it, we're the best.
So, hey, we're done.
Yeah. We've completed it.
We're done. We've perfected firefighting. if we could just get John in the boat, let's go. But it was that, and I mean, it's never struck my head that I had anything to contribute with either. Like why? Like I have nothing to teach anyone else. So that was one of my first experiences with the fire service. Like I have nothing here to do.
Yeah.
Besides
nothing to develop on, nothing to build on. Yeah.
I didn't have anything to do. So it was a shift. I started doing early other things revolving fire. I did like fire prevention. Started doing videos for fire prevention and stuff like that because there was just a need for it, and there was nobody doing it. So it's like,
but that's still a big shift versus doing it yourself. Because you have to get over yourself. I always say to people, I'm the fucking worst person to run a podcast because there's fucking thousands more interesting and significantly more knowledgeable people in the fire and rescue service than me. But so how frustrating do you find it? Like, and I'm sure you probably had this. It's like, God, you should do a course or you should do a thing because you meet a person that's so knowledgeable, but they're like, oh no, oh God. And it's some self-belief. Did you ever struggle with that though? Because you said like early on you started doing the fuck me, dude. That's actually a big step.
It was so gradual. I didn't really. It wasn't at a point where I said, "Oh, let's go out and teach the world about how to do firefighting." Okay. It was like I woke up one day. It was so gradual. I mean, I started doing like that fire prevention. Then I started getting to the road traffic collisions and technical rescue, and I thought that was important, which is not. Of course, firefighting is the most important thing.
Okay. Fuck me, I could just see the comments and the emails, but anyway, fucking hell, carry on.
Yeah, but they haven't figured out firefighting yet. They think that RCC is complicated.
It's not that, it's the rope world I'm most passionate about. Rope and water. Fucking hell. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, everyone has mistakes. Yeah. So it's okay, Pete. You'll see the light one day. No, but it is. I started doing stuff like that, and the first area I really got into was sharing information because I started a Swedish website and I started an English website. Actually, firegear.co.
I know you did. Yeah. I couldn't find it anymore. Though. Have you taken it down?
No, that was. That was.
I know it was 2015. You stopped doing that. I think.
Yeah, burnt on the stake of experiences, because first it was a Swedish way of spreading information, and then it was going to be a Swedish like a price comparison thing for fire service, where firefighters could leave reviews,
cool, and
find the cheapest vendor for certain things. And then I started going to be, I'm going to build that for Europe, like that was a fire gear, and I started building that one, and that's a whole different reason, a different conversation to have. But anyway, started gravitating more towards information rather than just the equipment. I was very equipment focused because that was the if you have the right nozzle, you'll do the best job. Yeah.
But then you get seeing all the gear and no idea. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah. But it was that transition. I started with equipment and stuff because informational knowledge. That was. In hindsight, of course, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that it was this depth of things I didn't understand and so on. But I started doing that, and that slowly but gradually drove me into firefighting knowledge because it opened up to different people in different places and so on. And then it was just the ground just opened beneath my feet. Basically, I said, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yes.
About fire behavior and so on. And also Sweden had a lot of good information, but it was packaged differently in different countries. And it fascinated me how the same information could be interpreted in different ways or packaged in different ways. And it just delivered something different. So it was just fascinating. And then I was sort of hooked because I realized the depth on firefighting, the complexity of firefighting, both like culturally, how it varies around the world, and legally, and acceptance of risk. It was so many areas that was so different compared to, like, for instance, road traffic collision. You go to a car fire, you go to road traffic collision in United States, Britain, Sweden, Germany. It basically looks the same because it's not that complicated. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying it's not that complicated. in comparison, because there's the variables are way less. No,
the variables, because vehicles are pretty much the same globally, with all due respect, and you're dealing with those things in isolation. Whereas, like you say, and we won't go down too far down this rabbit hole at the minute, only because you'll embarrass me completely. When we go into the complexities of fire behavior, you're dealing with, so many different building types, structural, infrastructure, separation, water pressure abilities in different areas, technical equipment, proficiency of crews, size of crews, and environmental challenge as well. The list there and the factors, the algorithm is significantly larger, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also the second part, which also fascinated me. It was when I looked at a 50-year horizon. I go like, well, self-driving cars, like accidents on the roads will diminish when eventually Elon succeeds.
When he nails that one.
Everybody, yeah. No, but look at that and so on. And I looked at fires. Nobody else going to solve that problem due to finances. Fire safety is not going to get better. At least that was my interpretation. Robots is not going to solve firefighting easily. Help, but not solve it, and so on. So I thought that it was a problem for society that's going to be. I'm going to have a lot of work to do for the next 20, 30 years was my calculation. Also, is part of it. Like, where do I want to make good work?
Is there enough juice in this squeeze? You know what I mean? And I think about this, and I had that same conversation probably with myself a couple of years ago, and I started doing the podcast, and I'm fucking about, and I'm like, oh God, is there enough in this? And then I probably had the same revelation that you did in a different capacity, where I'm like, Jesus Christ, like you could never complete this, the complexity and differences. And then obviously we branch out and we look into everything, wildfires, high rises, rope water, command structures, leadership. And you're like, oh, fucking hell, you're never going to complete this. And everything is just, no. I think in the last 5 years, buildings, vehicles, have just been injected with this acceleration as technology collides with itself, and you just think the atom that fractures off that and the amount of iterations of problems that need solving is just growing. And I feel like you could do with another 10 fire nerds in the space, and you probably still wouldn't have enough time to get elbow deep in some of these things.
No, it's like if you look at the whole fire service and you doing podcasting about fire services, just working within fire. It's just mind-boggling how many deep holes you can jump into.
Not only that, one thing that and it's the reason I really wanted to have a conversation with you, is because we are going through quite a unique thing in the UK Fire and Rescue Service now. It hasn't happened for probably 25, 30 years. You probably know about it. We're hemorrhaging a lot of skills. We are, skills we loosely use that term. Experience, certainly. Like people that have been in the job for a very long time, it's like the changing of the guard. We're recruiting significantly hard now. A lot of training development centres have shrunk and or lost funding and or people lost appetite as well. I was listening to a conversation you had with a guest recently, one of your guests on your YouTube channel, which we'll link in the notes for this, about the drive and motivation of instructors, motivating people to want to train and motivating instructors wanting to train as well. And we need that more than ever now. So I wanted to use this as a cheeky way to introduce people that aren't already aware of you to you and link them to your website. How are you seeing that from how you interact with people, both in the UK and across the world? Is this changing of the guard a thing that's happening a lot anywhere else, or because there's a lot of retirement going on where we are?
I don't know. At least people say that is, but I wonder if it's the same as the older ones always saying that the new generation is shit.
Yep.
It always feels like you're undergoing some massive.
We're going through a change at the minute. Well, fucking aren't we all?
Yeah. Every generation probably feels the same way. So in that sense, it's also real that you are going through a change. It's just that everybody else had a change too.
Yeah.
Before that, but yeah, I mean, of course, there's always been. I think it's like a cocktail. Like there is probably, like in the UK, I heard some numbers about how many senior officers, how many years they have in service and so on, and it's ridiculously low a lot of times.
Really low. Yeah. And it's going to get lower with this direct entry stuff.
Yeah.
Because people are going to come straight in at that station commander, station officer level, and then jump on this promised development path.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying that it's a huge problem, but it is a factor that you, of course, have to take into account. Like if you have very little experience, your training has to be all that better. And that's, of course, the problem, because training is not getting better, at least not getting more funding typically around the world.
Definitely.
Now, I do feel that there is if there is an acknowledgement in the world generally, at least the Western world is most that I've been in contact with, that there is I think we realize that we are not as good as we used to think we are.
Yeah.
Typically in every country, in Sweden and Norway and UK and so on, and I think it's this awakening from internet. I think it's happened. The more exposure you have, the more you compare yourself to others.
Isn't it? You used to be able to operate in silo and go, "Fuck, I'm good. Look how fucking good I am." Yeah. And then suddenly you realize that you can see the village next door and go, "Oh shit!" We're now in this global village where we go, "Oh shit!" Or not like we're crap, but more like we need to get back in the books. We need to remain that eternal student.
Yeah, and I think that realization generally sort of starting to hit the fire services, that we can be better. At least we're not as good as we think we are. But then reality, of course, we have a lot of retirees, we have low money for training, is then you have to balance that. How do you do that? But yeah, I think we're in that sense, we're on the path to doing something better. But training has always been the first thing you cut. And sort of the money's bad, because short term you don't see any difference. No,
and also you hide behind things and go, "Well, Lars, how many firefighters have died in our brigade in the last year?"
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
Obviously pretty fucking good, aren't we? We don't talk about how many buildings we've lost, the cost to the economy, the hemorrhage in skill sets, the actual raise in our risk because of our lack of sort of experience or exposure. Yeah, you're right. You don't pay it's like you're writing a check that you don't actually pay for 5 or 6 years when you go, "Oh shit."
No, it takes that, and I've thought a lot about this, like how to measure performance and so on. Since it is such a, how do you measure performance from training and so on? Like those are super important metrics. I don't delve into them because it's not what I do, but I thought a lot about it, and because it is, again, when I was a battalion chief, I sort of had to do it, but I think that the fire service has this recognition now. What to do with it, nobody knows. Like, how do you actually get to a level where you want to be at the best path?
I think some big low hanging fruit to jump forward is things like a lot of body worn camera, a lot of recording. Some people are scared to death, obviously, like of committing professional suicide. "Oh, Lars, you're going to hold it." Yeah, fuck yeah, this is the thing. But if you had an environment of trust where you're like, "Look, you are as good as you are. Like, the fact I'm seeing it or not seeing it, you're still that good or that shit." But I use them, although I'm not supposed to sometimes. I use them a lot in our training incidents and I do get the students to sign to say it's okay, but we're only allowed to use them for internal purposes because it's so useful giving feedback to students and say, "What you see in this moment here and what you did there," and the delay in reacting to moving through into that next space, into that next compartment. And then showing them that, mapping it over with the thermal imaging camera, and when they see the heat layer come back towards, and all this bollocks. Because otherwise, when you just say it on sitting down on a bench outside and go, "Oh yeah, I don't think it was very fucking good," that's not really very useful for me. Then you need to be able to give people the detail, and the detail, I think, is what you do so very well in a lot of your videos. Yeah,
I try to be very detailed. Now, I remember, I think the system's broken also. I don't know if there is a good system for this learning. I remember I wanted to be early. I started working body cams before it was a cool thing. And I wanted to set up an example that I want to be vulnerable. If I want everybody else to be vulnerable about their defects or their problems and their mistakes and so on, I want to be upfront with it. But I'll just tell you a short story about. I was a battalion chief, and I responded to a fire in a house in a garage, and it was started in a car outside of the garage. Went to the garage and started spreading into the house, and the house was connected. It was a dual house, so the garage was connected, and there was 2 houses. Basically, we ended up spraying water in the wrong house due to communication issues. I'm simplifying here a little bit, but we spread water in the wrong house. There was water damages there. We spread an unnecessary amount of water in the other villa. And I wrote a incident report, very critical, and I always take a lot of blame on me, even though I thought it was someone else's problem, because it's just too much complicated to start, outing other people. So I put the blame on me. And then I wrote an article for our region newspaper. And then, 2 days after, it was a headline in the local newspaper. It was "Firefighters spraying water in the wrong house." That was the front line of the newspaper, because they picked it up, the article from the internal one. But my boss came in and said, "You're not writing any more articles like that." Wow. Because we don't want that. We don't want that publicity. So basically, and I looked at it. The house owner was very happy when we got there and helped them. When he wrote the newspaper, what was he supposed to think? They're just a bunch of clowns.
Yeah.
He's going to be disappointed, or she. The insurance company is going to go, "Oh, they're fucking clowns. Let's sue them for whatever problems they had, because they were causing water damages because of clearly they said it themselves because of poor communication skills." So the insurance company, the fire service doesn't gain any new followers because we just look like clowns. So the fire service is not good for it, at least in the short term. My boss wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. My colleagues wasn't happy that they look like clowns. Nobody was happy about this. Nobody's happy. In the long run, it's a learning organization that moves forward and so on in the abstract. In the practical sense, it's just nobody wants this. And I think that's the reason. I was sitting in a national program. I self-invited myself to a national program. Who are you representing, Lars? Like, I'm representing Lars.
I've done that a few times now. And they're like, which service are you with? I'm with the Firefighters podcast. I'm nobody. Yeah. And you sit around some incredible, not incredible, but some very senior leadership people, and they're like, the fuck are you doing here?
What are you doing here? Who's paying you? Nobody? Why are you here?
I know.
No, so I self-invited myself to and the whole thing, the point of that program was supposed to put learnings from incidents back into service. I was like, how could we better at learning? But nobody was asking the question, what are the things that we're writing to be spread? What are the actual outcomes to use? So some officer writes an incident report. I thought this worked great. Yeah. How do you know that's true? It could be entirely wrong. And you want to put a lot of emphasis in spreading that to the other services. I put the nozzle in this position and the fire went out. Yeah. Okay, maybe the fire went out just simply had nothing to do with the water. It's something someone else did something and shut the door or whatever. Yeah. How do you know that this is true? Everybody should buy this nozzle. That was the outcome. How do you know that's true? And people go "Oh, that's a hard question. Let's not talk about that. Let's just focus on the easy problems." And I think that there's so many issues with that evaluation in terms of self-deception, of unintentional self-deception of your brain, just trying to make things work, just incoherences in logical conclusions, and also deliberate things because you don't want to blame someone else or blame yourself for seeing things not working out. So the more I've learned about learning from experiences, the less I rely on my own and others' experience to learn from. Wow. So body cams are excellent, but
because they don't have an opinion. You could argue they have a slight opinion from the angle they're put from. You haven't got a full thing.
Yes,
but you're
they have a bias.
They have a bias by sense of what they're pointing at, and but they're very innocent in that respect, and that's what I love about them.
At least you get time scales right.
Yes,
which is one of the things that are majorly fucked up when you look at it.
Mate, and you see that in police reporting and stuff like that, and there's some great books when they speak about the distortion of memory and time, and you go, me and Lars, we spoke for fucking 6 hours. Well, no, the recording said 35 minutes, or and you're like, how many people were there? Well, there was just me and Lars, and he was really fucking angry. Well, you see in this recording, there's 3 other people in the room, and that distortion of time, and it almost seemed to happen immediately. It wasn't. There was 7 minutes where you could have made a decision, but you were just so fucking stuck in the decision vortex that you failed to act. And that's the uncomfortable truth of it. And that's okay, but you're never going to be able to rectify that until you recognize it. So One thing I wanted to ask about, sorry, because I know I kind of jumped past it, and that's my fault. Your 2-year or training coming into the service, when you look back from it in the fullness of time, and this is not to say, oh God, we were just stupid, we were fucking, we don't know what we were learning back then, but is there any training scars that you still see existing from when you first joined? I love talking about training scars when I say to people, because if they don't understand the logic behind something, sometimes we do some very illogical things. And, you came into a service that perceived itself to be at the precipice of its firefighting proficiency versus what you later learned. Not to say that what they were doing was terrible, but like, how has that evolved from how you see firefighters train now from what it was like when you joined?
Well, I only talk about firefighting because the other things are not important. But no, but it's the only thing.
How much of a faction was that as an interest? So, for example, like we have 12-week training at Fire Service College, and sometimes in the UK now a lot of services, and only 2 weeks of that is breathing apparatus, and then you're on the trucks.
Way more.
And that's what I'm saying. There's a difference, right?
Oh, it is. So, I mean, Sweden has since the 80s. 70s, 80s, 70s put a lot of emphasis on fire behavior and so on. I mean, it's like every fire service in the world, it's been downsized and cut, but it's still proportionally much higher than most countries. I get astounded sometimes when I hear a little training some fire service put into, like, oh, I've been to a container twice and now I'm an expert. And you go, like,
that's a genuine worry. Yeah, I know, 100%.
What?
And you were the fourth team in, so it wasn't a good burn, and the fucking last team had put it out, and we had to bash a load of synthetic smoke in because the conditions weren't very good. And you're like, and people just come out and go, "Hey, did you feel how hot it was? Did you?" And people are like, "It was just a fucking, you just dipped me into a bath and then pulled me out and went, so did you learn the thing?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know. It was all a bit of a fucking car crash, to be honest. I don't really know what I was supposed to take away from that."
No, I think that in that sense, my basic training was way better than I think probably anyone in the world in terms of volume, but also in terms of a lot of quality. Now, again, I think that, but the instructors back then, they did, of course, the best they could, but I would change 90% of what we were doing. But
really,
it was still, for the time when I went in there, I think it was decent. But did I get scars? Yeah, for sure. But did I get unnecessary scars? Should have known better, partially. But a lot of that information that I would change and the sort of the key bits of what I would change that change everything else, that is information and from research or from my experience that came afterwards. So I don't think.
I think what we're struggling with so much now, and to echo what you're saying there, is, and I often say this about business, like, you're too busy working in your business to work on your business. And I see that when I look at services, like a lot of training development centers, training schools, however people reference them in their organization, are so busy doing the thing and assessing that they simply don't have time, or time is not made available to them to go to a Lars conference, to go and attend a fire behavior seminar somewhere, to even just take time out to develop the course, and work on it. And that's where that's both sad, but also allows a wonderful gap in the market for individuals such as yourself and a lot of other individuals to do this essential work. But so much of that never makes it fully into programs and systems because it happens externally.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons I did stop the fire service because I couldn't develop even my own fire service when I was working in the fire service.
Really?
Because there was so much other things to do. I was doing too much stuff that I didn't see value in, or I saw very localized value. It didn't scale.
No. Yeah, you would have a 3-hour in-depth conversation with 2 or 3 people on a station in the middle of nowhere, feel a little bit of value from helping them, but then also going, you're going to forget this and it's not going to make it. Because when you're going to go back to your station and your officer's going to say, shut the fuck up, that's not what we do. Yeah. That I can certainly echo and find it very frustrating.
I think scalability. You talked about, you mentioned that, there's got to be some level of, like the excellent firefighter you see that doesn't want to teach. There has to be some confidence in your skills, that I am confident enough in what I have to offer that I want to do it to more people, not just 5 people. I want to do it to 10. I want to do it to 10,000 people. So I say that there's of course, a good instructor is a healthy balance between some kind of narcissism and humility.
We struggle. Go deeper on that, because we struggle with that in the UK. This, like, people say ego, and they say stupid things like pride comes before a fall, and we're very self-deprecating in the UK. And even though on the podcast I constantly say, like, oh, I don't know shit, I'm still a student, I've been in 15 years, whatever, but I still want to learn every day, and I sit with people like you who know significantly more than me. But doesn't mean you can't put yourself out there. You've got to be. I always call it learning out loud. Is the podcast, because you got to be confident and a little bit audacious in the stuff that you do know, but still be humble enough to learn.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, and I've also, and I thought I listened to some of your podcasts, go like, "Shut the fuck up, Pete. You're not, you're not that bad, and you're not that humble.
All right.
Stop saying that."
Okay,
you
sorry.
But no, but it is. You have to be, again. If you're all humble, you go around like asking questions about everything, but you're very humble, say, I don't really understand anything. So you would never put yourself forward in any situation because you honestly don't think you know anything.
Okay.
And it would be like that would be horrible. Like all true humble person would be useless for society.
Yeah. I've seen that. Like, I used to have a partner that was like that, and I think mums are sometimes like this. And sorry to point mums out, but like they're very self-deprecating. Yeah. They're like, "Oh God," I'm like, "Shut the fuck up. You're great. You're really proficient. Yeah. Fuck me. You look after all of us and all this shit." But sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but it is. I think that, like, even if you talk about like Socrates, if there was a Socrates and so on, going around asking questions. Of course, he wouldn't go around asking questions if he didn't want to prove a point or actually prod something. I don't think this makes sense. Let's say we can ask a lot of questions and either validate that I was right or the other person will change. There has to be some self of, I think this is wrong and I want to change it. That's the whole reason for asking the question also. But also, again, of course, I want to learn.
I always call it poking the paper. Yeah. So, like, imagine, I forget what film it was, but there's like a poster over the wall and you want to see if there's a hole behind the wall. And I always say, like Lars is saying this thing to me, I'm going to poke a hole and see if it's full of shit. See if my finger goes straight through it. I want Lars to push back. But people can't have debates these days very well. They seem to think we're arguing. I'm like, no, we're going to have a healthy debate. I want to have a debate with Lars, and then he'll disprove me, and I'll go, fuck it, absolutely. Your point is actually bulletproof. But people struggle with that as well sometimes.
Yeah, and I think, again, like, if you were all that humble, you would be sort of useless, because the only thing you would use your humbleness to is to get better yourself, and that is sort of very limited in scale. So I think all good instructors have that, a healthy balance. Of course, if you're all ego, you will very quickly fall off. Nobody will listen to you anyway, because it doesn't make any sense, because he just talks about himself, or he talks about this subject, but he's not willing to listen to anyone else says, which is a bad instructor habit, because it's a very bad way of teaching. You're saying, just listen to me. So there's this, and I get annoyed when people are doing this false sense of humility. Okay. They go like, "Oh, I don't know anything, Pete." And you're like, "No, Pete, you're fucking good. You haven't started.
I'm sure that sometimes, and I need to do less of that. You're right.
You should go like, but you, because you can be, and I try to be that. I'm not saying I'm successful all the time, but try to find that balance between, I think I have something valuable to offer. Ideas or ways of connecting people or interviewing people, it could be whatever. I think I have something valuable to offer, but I'm humble enough that I constantly want to get better so that I can bring more value to the table. It is this healthy balance between, and I try to use a lot of humor about myself. I try to shit on myself with humor, because that's good way of pushing myself down to the level of being being very humble about where I come from and all the mistakes I've done, but also, of course, seeming to be humble. Actually, being is good, but seem to be humble to the ones I talk about and take them on the journey I had. Like, I started from this position, I thought this was true, horrible. And then I went in this journey, I end up in this conclusion here. And I take them on that journey all the time. I should try. But again, that is, I wouldn't do that journey unless I had a confidence that I had something valuable to offer in the end.
Yeah.
If I go to a firefighter that says, look, I went into this room and it was just all black, and the instructor said, cool when it's necessary. I have no idea when it's necessary. So I just cool a little bit here, a little bit there, and the fire went out and I just went home. Awesome. What's the student going to take from that? Okay, it was a very humble guy. He had no idea what is going on. Now I feel better about going to my next fire because I don't know what the shit I'm doing either.
Yeah.
Like it has to be, like I have to be humble in the sense I don't understand this, but I have something valuable to offer in the end.
Today's podcast is powered by our partner Lifelines and their revolutionary approach to functional hydration. Just like in firefighting, water is essential for body function, but studies show more than 80% of firefighters are dehydrated. A 25-year study findings from the National Institute of Health showed poor hydration to be linked to early aging and chronic disease, and even mild dehydration results in significant negative impact outcomes including headaches, exhaustion, rapid pulse, irritability, and poor cognitive function. A study conducted by Yale University showed that participants who were just 1% dehydrated had a 12% increase in errors when performing tasks that required cognitive flexibility. In addition, dehydration is shown to worsen mood and attitude, contribute to confusion and poor decision making, and negatively affect memory and judgment. In other words, you really don't want your incident commander, firefighter, or for that matter any first responder on a critical scene to be even slightly dehydrated. Mild dehydration occurs when a person is just 1.5% dehydrated, a condition that does not even trigger the thirst response in most people. So just imagine how quickly a firefighter or any first responder can and does become dehydrated in their day-to-day duties, which is why I address my hydration first thing every day with Lifelines. Go into the notes for this episode and specifically check out Lifelines Hydro Fuel and Hydro OG by clicking in the notes for the podcast for a clean energy solution designed for those who demand more from their day. Now back to the show. Talk to me now about when you decided to leave, because feeling that discomfort, feeling that, if I'm hearing you correctly, I don't feel like I'm truly adding enough value in the way I can. I don't think what I'm doing is scalable. I'm going to have done 30 years and not really made much of a difference. Having that discomfort, but then finally hitting the fuck it button and making that transition out of it is huge. I've not done it. Maybe I'm a bit of a pussy. I don't know. But you've done it. I know you feel free not to go into too much detail if it's obviously personal stuff about the service or whatever. But what was that decision to finally do that?
Well, it was hard. There was no ifs and buts. Because you make it sound like I'm sort of an all altruistic guy. Just how the value for society is all I care about. Look, there's a lot of personal things. Like we had a kid. My wife wanted to move to a different city. I was bored because, again, the tasks I was set to do, I didn't see them scale well and so on, sort of those things. I was super frustrated because of the lack of changes made and my situation be able to affect those changes in my formal position. So it was personal things outside of the fire service about my wife wanted to move. We had a kid. We wanted to do some other things. It was about being tired of the actual people I was working with. Now I'm not saying that we're so bad people. I'm just saying I'm a sort of person that wants to have novelty, and that goes to people too. My wife and kids not included. Like conservative in that sense. But like I like to be in new people, new ideas, new things. It was just getting stagnant. So I wanted to quit that done. But going for that, because I had a choice, should I apply for a different fire service in a new city?
Yes.
That was, of course,
that's what I'm saying.
First thing. Yeah, should I do that?
Because you'd done all your career, obviously you did that 10-month period, in the volunteer. But then had you done your whole career in one service? Those 12 years.
But I worked but the fire service was sort of bunched together in the region, and I worked a lot for the region too.
Okay.
But yes, I basically did the same service. So I was a choice: should I apply for a new job and new service? Start over as a firefighter, or should I try to get like an officer position? Which some services you could do lateral transitions. Some say you basically have to start over.
Really? Because that worries me as well. I think to myself, if I were to leave, for a couple of years and go and have some adventures with a different company, or doing some research or helping them do whatever, you're not allowed back in. Can't go back in the club. Got to start from zero again. Who the fuck are you? Can't remember you. No, none of your qualifications count. Fuck off. Start from nothing again. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense. No, I mean, and again, I'll blow smoke up your ass, but like, if you had said, oh, I'd like to work for London Fire Brigade or whatever, someone should snap your fucking hand off and go, yeah, do you want to come and run our BA training department? But they'd be like, can you apply to be a firefighter, please, Lars? You're like,
it would. I mean, to be fair, in Sweden, it's up to the fire chief to do whatever they want, basically. Okay. But it's getting more and more loose, meaning because it's hard to get firefighters overall, so that they have.
Is it the same over there? Is it that bad?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think in Germany it's still pretty strong. They've got like 1.5 million firefighters, and I think who was it? Michael Reich was telling me that 1 in every 100 people is a fire, and I'm like, wow,
firefighter.
Yeah, in some capacity,
they're involved.
They're involved. But either they still hold a lot of political power, and it's like they're respected. I don't know, but like you say in Sweden, they're just struggling to recruit. Say because we certainly are.
Yeah, but I think it's the downside of making it professional. So if you pay for something, why would you do it for free?
Yes.
So if you have a very limited amount of professional firefighters like Germany has, in comparison to the overall population, there's a lot of volunteers who do it for free. And,
yes.
And that is the internal gratitude of doing something, not because of you're getting paid for it, you're doing it because of the community and service and everything, other things. Sweden was very early, as UK followed also in that footstep. Sweden was very early in making it very professional, and then we paid a part-time. It was basically we have 0 volunteers left, and that is.
But that has benefits as well, doesn't it? Because you can hold people to account then. Like I've run a number of charity things in the past, and charity is always hard because I can't hold you to expectation because you're doing the shit for free. Yeah. And it's like, well, fucking hell, Pete, you know what? I can't be fucking bothered anymore. And then, so that's hard. Whereas if you do make it professional, you can say, look, this is the standard. You need to achieve it. So pros and cons.
In theory.
Yeah, fucking hell. And then sometimes that gets dropped as well. You're like, shit, just please keep turning up.
Practice is slow. Like, let's have a good day. Nobody gets hurt and nobody gets sad. That's a good training day. Did someone learn something? Nope.
Well, we'll try next time.
Yeah. No, but I think that, no, absolutely. There's no few easy questions left to answer in the world. I think all the easiest questions, like, is it good with food? Yes, but not too much, no. But it's like there's no easy questions left. And same thing, if you make it too professional, you have a lot of benefits. And but one of the downsides is why do it for free if someone else gets paid for it? So I think that is one part of it's hard to recruit firefighters these days. And the other part is I think the more inclusive you make in the sense that every advertisement, I think the same problem in the Western world. If every advertisement says anyone can do this, it's not very hard. Anyone can do this. How many wants to do it? Because if anyone can do it, it's not a challenge. And people don't climb mountains because it's easy. They climb mountains because it's hard. And we have lost because in the past it was seen as something mysteriously dangerous and hard.
Yeah.
Now it's
a pursuit worthy of my efforts.
Yes, exactly. And now it's unmysterious and it's not hard. Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Like, of course, you're not going to get applicants. You're going to get the worst applicants who say, "Okay, I want to have it because it's a cushy job or good pensions or whatever." And
then the people that want to challenge and want to feel like they've actually, because you lose the sense of achievement there. It's like the old fucking participation ribbons, isn't it? It's like, well, everyone gets a trophy. You get a trophy. You get a trophy, and you're like, well, what's the fucking point then? You've just devalued the whole fucking thing, and that's really upsets me.
Again, like so we want to be inclusive and go like, oh, excellent. We want to have diversity and so on. Yeah, but downside is if everybody can join, nobody wants to. So at least they're not the right kind of person, because if you, let's say, everybody can join super easy and you get good pay. Look, is that the kind of person you want? No.
And some of the big sales pitches in the military slogans in the UK was 99.9% need not apply. You know what I mean? And that, if we thought to put that in the fight, they'd be like, oh, fuck that. No, don't say that, because no one will apply. Well, the military don't struggle with recruitment because people, it triggers that well, fuck you, I'm going to go for it. I'm fucking one of the, I'm the 1% or the 0.1%. And we have lost some of that, which also makes, perhaps to those people that are trying to promote that, they would say your romanticism, or even mine, they'd say, look, people don't need to be that fucking good, Lars. Chill the fuck out. Do you know what I mean? Why do they need to have a full understanding of it?
Depends on who you want to arrive at your house and do coffee in the morning and save your kids.
That is the best point. Yeah. You never want the reason that it didn't succeed because, they haven't really got a good understanding of what they're doing. The firefighters weren't actually very good, or the fight. We'll never say that. Like you say, although you wrote it down once, we would never have a chief fire officer write that down because it would be too honest. Yet the hypocrisy is we're not putting that focus back on the training and holding people to that high expectation.
No, I think it's because it's always been one of the pushbacks I've gotten as an instructor when I wanted to push people harder or set higher standards was, of course, what do we do when things people don't, pass the test or whatever? What do we do when someone gets sad? We don't want sad people. And of course that's a genuine concern about the people you work with and so on. But the problem, of course, is I think it's the opposite. You get content as a human being when you succeed, when you know what's expected of you and you succeed in doing that. Now you get very displeased and anxious when you don't know what's expected of you and you don't know if you can deliver that. That's a highly anxiety-causing thing to have. So simple. It could be that a firefighter at a station doesn't want to drive the aerial appliance. Why? Because it's unclear, but they don't want to drive it. Cost probably. There's not a specific skill or test they have to pass to know that for themselves that they can pass it and they're qualified, they're good, they passed it, the sense of achievement and so on. Boom, problem goes away. Yeah. The problem is not to lower the standards, the problem was to raise the standard, or at least set a standard and make sure they pass it. For the individual, I think it's super important. I know that I'm very anxious when I don't know what's expected of me and I don't know if I can meet that expectation. That's highly problematic.
Yeah.
And I think that's for firefighters. I think that clear expectations and preferably, well, I put it like this. So if, now we're getting to different side of the instructor philosophy I have, but I think that the organization should have a very clear minimum standard. Clarity is super important. Like, what is expected of me? How long should it take to get my mask on? How long should it take my breathing apparatus on my back?
That's a great point, actually. The pre-entry checks. People fuck about until they get to the door assessments, and then they think it starts there. You're given a brief, and you're like, fuck me, guys, you've used 15 bar study. What the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? Sorry.
Well, I have a huge problem with how UK Fire Service, how they do everything up to the door and after the door. But we can talk about that.
No, please. Yeah, we'll go there, brother.
That later. But yeah, like the organization should set minimal standards. That's hugely important. They should be super clear, whatever they are. Like, that's up for debate. And then, but how many seconds you should take a mask on, whatever. But that's very clear. But the organization shouldn't set high standards. Now, that is one thing I myself, because if you set high standards from the organization, you put a lot of emphasis on it's our responsibility to make you good. And we should train you to that position, so on. And if we don't succeed, that's going to cost a lot of money, and blah, 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 blah. I think that the organization should set very low standards, and they should say, if you meet our minimum standard, you are a decent, shitty firefighter.
Yeah.
But it's very clear that if you meet those expectations, you are basically on the low end, and you're a shitty firefighter, and you should know it. If you want to be good, it is your responsibility as an individual. These are the resources we have available. You can book extra training here. You have all this curriculum. You can watch these videos. You can do these trainings. You can take these tests. But it's your responsibility. We will help you to the level we can. Because budgets are what budgets are. But we know, and you know, that what we can afford is the minimum standard. And you should pass that. but you should know that you're a shitty firefighter. I think that's the best level, regardless of what kind of money you have, because you have to put I do this. If I were to have I didn't do this back in the day when I was a battalion chief and so on, but a lot of different, I didn't know and so on. But when I do instructor courses, I sometimes do, I force the instructors to come up and say, okay, the first question I asked them, before we do anything else, I asked them, I draw a line on the whiteboard. I said 1 to 10. How good of a fire instructor or a fighter would you want to be? So everybody has to go and do publicly in front of everybody else, put a dot on the line that says how good we want to be. 1 is the worst in the world. 10 is the best in the world. 5 is sort of average. How good do you want to be? And 95% of people put themselves somewhere around the range of 7 to 10. They want to be best in the world or really good. Okay. And someone's go really good. Yeah, but I have other priorities in life too. I can't spend everything on fine. Okay, so the first one. Okay, now everybody said they want to be good. I think that's the baseline you have for an instructor. If people say they want to be bad,
yeah,
you have a different problem.
What the fuck are you doing
drilling on the fire grid? Yeah, what the fuck are you doing there? But people don't tend to. And I've never been to a place where people actually say they want to be bad. Yeah. Now the second question is where we get to meet. Then you draw a line 1 to 10. Whose responsibility is it for you to get good? 1 is the employer's, whoever your employer is, or 10 it's your responsibility. Where do you? And they all have to go publicly and go up and put a line here. Whose responsibility is it? Because if people say, I don't want to be good, and then they said, it's the employer's job to make me good. Okay, there's nothing I can do as an instructor. But if they say, and this is the outline which we get to, it is, I want to be good, and I realize it's really my responsibility to be good. Now I can get help from the instructor in front of me, from the organization, whatever, because now I want to put the instructor in the position, or if I was a crew chief, this is what I would do with my crew. Now I'm in position to say, okay, if you want to be good, I can try to help you. We can go out and drill for 10 hours on raising a ladder. Either I force you to it because the department sets high standards and I'm forcing you, or I can offer you an opportunity to help you to get better. And I think that's the thing you get with if you have an organization that says we have very clear minimum standards, but you should know that you suck. And if you want to get good, and we want you to be good, this is the resources we have. We have instructors that coach you. We have mentors. We have training fields. All these opportunities for you to get good. And if you get good, we will recognize you being good. We will set you aside. You will get a Roman's plume on your helmet when you get to it that will burn off every time, but we will pay for it because we will show that you are the centurion of BA attack. No, but we will recognize your effort to be good.
Yeah. I think that's so important. I've always said to people, you've got to work twice as hard on yourself as you do on the job. You are your greatest asset, and especially now when I think of resources, I used to have this conversation and I have this conversation now with my recruits, and I'm sure I get it wrong lots of the times, but it's like resources versus resourcefulness. Like when you and I joined, or certainly I can only speak from my own experiences, resources were harder to come by, not impossible at all, but you had to try harder. Like I would have to go down to the station and get the manuals of firemanship. I would have to go to the headquarters. This is before I joined the service, and try and log onto their internal system and then print a debrief document and then sit and read it because I wasn't allowed to take it home because it wasn't allowed to leave the building and all this sort of shit. Whereas now, like, resources are abundant. I mean, people can go to your website, onto your YouTube and see a bunch of stuff. They can just Google stuff. There's CFBT websites out there. There's so many resources, but it's the resourcefulness. Because like you say, when you draw those 2 lines and you say, whose responsibility is it and how good you want to be, a lot of that, back to the stoicism aspect, is within your sphere of control. There's a lot. There's a lot more shit in that bucket now that you can actually control if you do want to develop yourself, versus that helpless. What do you expect me to do, Lars? The service say they won't put me on another course. The service, well, shit. I've been on a station. You've got bloody 7 hours to do whatever the fuck you want to do. That must be very difficult.
Yeah. But the hard one is like if you do those 2, and that you typically go well, that's when you do is how good are you? and they have to publicly go in front of it. If you would be really good in this room, do you think you're the best in this room, or do you think they're the worst in this room? And that could be or it could be are you best in your department or the worst, or are you best in the world or best in you can draw that line, whatever parables you want. The closer you get to home, the harder, the more complicated it is those discussions around the company.
Yes, 100%.
But it is like, if people think like I had, because I realized that last question was very important. If I the first years in the fire service, when I thought I was the shit, why train if I'm the shit?
Yeah.
I want to be good, but I am good. So why train?
Yeah.
So you have to get that level. You have to realize, which is the important thing, that if your department recognizes you have passed all the competence tests, now you're an excellent. You've worn BA 2 times. Now you're a senior firefighter. You're a super highly advanced special forces firefighter. Go like, why would I learn more? I'm the shit.
Yeah.
But if the fire service would actually acknowledge that now you're barely competent. You're like the minimum standard. You're basically not dangerous for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the level we require you to be. At that level, we can afford to make you. If you want to be decent or even good, now it's up to you. And so, if we could do that, I think that would make. But it's not a very popular way of fire service going on.
It requires a lot of self-reflection. Yeah, is the really difficulty. People like to point fingers. They are less interested in pointing thumbs. Is what I always try and say. It's easier to point fingers all the time. Yeah. I want to get into some weeds. I want to get into some detail, because I appreciate for some people they'll have seen your name and they'll have been like, "Fuck me, Pete." Ask him this, and I always get, this is where I fail on every conversation, because people always say, "How come we didn't ask this?" Okay. But I know a lot of this information is out there for you. But for people that are completely unfamiliar with you, we'll reference your website in here. But I want to get into some real. And we won't go too deep, but some stuff around training rigs in the UK. There's a conversation that's happening around carcinogens and exposure. Obviously, firefighting was declared carcinogenic career path by the World Health Organization last year. So when a lot of services are now investing in training rigs, there is a conversation around carbonaceous rigs versus synthetic versus gas rigs. You have trained at a lot of these environments. You help design training environments for people. There's some work in there around wood smoke generators, which people can see on your website. Give us a pro and con, trying to steel man the argument from both directions of what type of training rigs you've experienced, some that you feel are the best, and is the risk exposure aspect versus realism of training worth it for carbonaceous rigs, as an example.
Oh, it's such a...
I know it's a fucking deep conversation, brother. There's so many places to go in this. Start wherever you want, and we'll try and navigate it.
Well, let's start with cancer. Is it an issue? Sure. Is it a big issue? No.
Okay.
I know someone's going to have a problem with that, but if I thought it was a big issue, I wouldn't be doing what I do. So it's pretty obvious that I don't think it's a big issue. So what I mean with an issue is, of course, there's elevated risk of cancer. What I mean with it's not a big issue is, first off, if it's elevated risk, that doesn't mean it's not unmanageable. Doesn't mean, like if you're still more in danger if you smoke than if you're a firefighter. Like we have to put it in perspective. Like, it's not, we can't work this job anymore. We can't do training because everybody's get cancer. No, fuck no. No. It's a problem. We need to manage it better, but it's not a deal breaker. So there's still, cancer is an issue, but it's not a deal breaker. I
think the easy answer is to say it's a deal breaker, isn't it? The easy answer is to go, fuck it, don't do it at all. Because then we don't have to work hard at procedure and behavioral change and the way we go about this training. The easy answer is to say, don't do it anymore.
That's to take away the risk of going into live fire training, for instance. Take away no, you just introduce a shit ton of new risks. Like crappy firefighters being one of them.
But again, you're just kicking the can down the road. Because hopefully you'll be inside a building somewhere and nobody will see that you're shit, and hopefully you just don't die.
You have this stories about firefighters. The first real fire to see is in an actual real fire. You go like, how the fuck did that risk assessment look like? We're going to train our firefighters spraying water on a paper fire, and then we're going to send him into a real fire and go like, that seems like a good assessment. But anyway, so cancer is an issue, and so how to manage cancer? I divide into multiple levels. Like I have the individual levels. That's about your own personal procedures. How do you decon? How do you wash yourself? How do you put your gear off? All those things. I say most of the problems you find in personal, like wear your BA when you should, and don't stand and smoke if you don't have to. Take it off in a proper order. Don't contaminate yourself if you don't have to. A ton of your own protection lies in your own procedures. Now, it's partly because of equipment. Now, you of course wear your breathing apparatus, wear your kit when needed. Don't wear your kit when it does not need it. Like for a person, if I look at I look at all the equipment. I look at the SCBA, the fire gear, the gloves, boots, everything that's contaminated. I never should a million years do a physical workout in training gear. That's a moronic thing to do. Like if you want to do a hard workout, you buy a snow scooter overall. It's hot. It's going to do the same job, but it's not going to kill you in cancer.
Okay.
And it's an expensive piece of kit. Why are we using fire gear for road traffic collisions? Insane. Moronic. You should have a different kit. The fire kit should only be worn to fires. It should only be worn when you go to real fires. If you do training in a cold environment in a basement somewhere, you should have a training kit that's not doesn't have to be a thermal liner. It doesn't have to be a Gore-Tex liner. It could just be an overall to make you hot and sweaty because you crawl around in a basement. It's cost a fifth of that rather than a fire kit. Like you should only wear your fire kit at an actual fire when you need that protection. From a cost perspective, from a if you go to other calls, like if someone's staying in a fire kit at a side of a water rescue, how that's insane. You should have a super purposeful working. So that's one issue. Like proper equipment. Now the equipment is not going to protect you from all things. Now if there's a particle barrier in your PPE and then you have your SCBA on, you're still getting gases through your PPE. So I wear an active carbon underwear. It's very new on the market, but it's from Sweden, which basically absorbs all the gases that comes through the PPE. So I have it's an active carbon underwear. It's just
I've seen some. It's full over the, or I see a model of it, full over the head overalls type thing. When I saw it, and the person said, putting these on going to fires, I immediately challenged the practicality, unfortunately, of, someone being able to rig in this stuff either when they get to an incident or en route to an incident. Not to say that, at least for when you look at exposure levels, for fire behavior instructors like myself or whatever, maybe the juice would be worth the squeeze there. For operational crews, I thought, this is a stretch here. But for somebody like you that's doing it all the time.
I think for instructors and for training, it's cost a piece of kit, but for me, it's my it's my personal health. So it allows me to be more. I can be into more fires without getting the same exposure. I like that. I like going to the training fires. So if I can reduce my exposure that way too, it's great. It just allows me to be in.
Do you have a brand? Would you have what would you suggest for people if they wanted to?
There's only one of these. I know if you're talking about something else. It's an active carbon underwear. It's called CPP Garments in Sweden.
Okay.
But for operational, it is another piece of kit. Now, you could go down this route and what research shows by underwear. So if you have your station underwear and you use it under your fire kit, that's contaminated. You're not going to get it that clean in your normal washing machine. You're walking around with station underwear that's probably cancerogenic already. You have to probably. I'm guessing CO2 washing will solve that, probably. For station underwear.
Yes, the LCO2 stuff. We had Hunter Apparel on. They've just brought it to the UK, and I know they're fighting hard. It's been adopted heavily in America for a little while now. I don't know, what's the use of it, the sort of proliferation of that technology in Sweden?
Not at all. It's not in market. I know that manufacturers are looking at it and so on. It's an infrastructure thing also, like that department can have their own, it's probably have to be some kind of replacement system for gear, which a lot of departments have outside of Sweden. In Sweden, all departments own their own gear, and everything is in-house. The infrastructure is different. It is not conducive to that kind of operation that you send them away for cleaning and so on. But anyway, I don't want to jump too far into this. I want to get passed on a bit. But I think that like a lot of things is about personal, how to protect yourself. But then you also have like tactics and strategies also play into like what you shouldn't go right hand into the wall and go just searching right hand into the wall, crawling down. You should go straight to the fire and just knock it out and ventilate. That's the best thing for you. That's the best thing for the victim. That's the best thing for the building. Like there's those methods and how you operate also play a huge part in how much exposure you have. So that's also part of it. Now, I'm not saying that cancer should dictate the way you fight fire. I think that's totally uncalled for. But it just happens to be that if we do it better for the victim, which is shorter time in exposure, we make it better for ourselves. So it goes hand in hand with how I think you should operate. So you have those personal things and you have those just tactical things or methods, and then your training side. Now, if you take, I think there's a future in virtual reality for sure. I don't think the systems are there yet in terms of firefighting. I think for like organization of fireground, maybe there's some interesting things about, organizing the fireground, especially for commanders. For sure, definitely. But for operational inside a fire, I think don't think the systems are good enough yet. But if you take away that, so the next clean system that in Sweden, became popular 15 years ago, started gas fire systems became more popular. When gas fire system, I mean heated with propane flames, but basically no smoke because it should be clean. Yeah. And then you use polypropylene smoke, disco smoke, or theatrical smoke. Yeah. But you can't have heat at the same time, so you get inverted. You get smoke. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It doesn't act properly.
And we had that for 15 years. Some departments in Sweden are still buying new systems like that. But more and more departments, and I'm heavily against that, are realizing that we can't build good firefighters because, sure, it's clean training and we can practice procedures. But I remember when I started shooting instructional videos for how firefighters should behave in a room, like how to do your search. And I was still back on right hand, left side in the wall. It was 15 years ago. 10 years ago, and I was doing like how should they move inside the room, and I realized every time I shot the videos I had to redo them because the firefighters were doing unintentional things because they could see things because we were shooting video. We had to see all the things, how they communicated. Oh, you go there, I go there, you take this, you take this. Everything was communicated unintentionally by knowing where did I point. So all the way back to the little things, the gas-fired systems, when you have visibility and things don't match up. If you I'm a huge believer in the thermal imager camera as an essential part of firefighting. When you take a thermal imager in a smoke, you don't get the feedback you get from real fire. You can't see where to go. There's no heat coming from anywhere. You don't see flows. You're missing 90% of the assessments.
Because following flow paths, as you alluded to there, is one of the most... The whole directional search pattern thing, I had a conversation with an old firefighter from London, and he said to me, and I don't know if you know a different history of it, but he said it actually just originated from some big open plan market areas, internal markets that we'd had in London, and we'd lost some firefighters in them. And there'd been a death at one point in time. This is way back now. And he said, so we came up with a left-hand, right-hand route pattern searching. But he said that doesn't really correlate over. That seems to have bled into structural firefighting, where these are 2 up, 2 down structures, where you should just be following the fucking flow paths. Do you know a different origin of it, or does that make sense?
Well, there's probably different stories where it can, but the orientation is the key. Like if you came from a system where go back in time, especially a lot of fire services around the world didn't have a hose line, and you went into a structure and you didn't have orientation. There's no hose line to follow out, and you don't have orientation. The likelihood of getting lost is significant. Yeah. But if orientation was the real reason, it wasn't that we should find things faster. That's to get explanation came like to be systematic. Yeah. It was about orientation, where you are, where your way out is. When we demand people have a host line, or you have a host line, now you have a path out. So at least you can find your way out, unless you've gone through past the fire and hose burn off or something. Yeah. But the other thing that when we've got thermal imagers, we have a lot of time we have good orientation with the thermal imager. So we take away the need for the orientation models. Now if we take away the need for orientation, and now we should go, okay, we have orientation, but the first thing started happening with thermal imager was we start doing orientation with thermal imager, then we put it down and then go right hand, left side anyway, because we were supposed to systematically search everything.
Yeah.
And then we go, and that for me was one of the first key things that started to change everything for me, more than 10 years ago then, when I realized this is not a good way to operate for the victim.
Fucking illogical.
It doesn't make any sense.
Mate, we have this, and I'm banging my head against this door now where I'm like, so your route was, follow the flow path to the stairs. We believe the fire's on the first floor, fucking whatever. And they're going through, and they can fucking see the stairs. They can see the flow path in the thermal, and they're like, but I needed to stay on my right-hand lay, I needed to, and I'm like, but you can see the fucking stairs. We've told you. I believe there's only one set of stairs in. I'm looking at, I'm reading the building. Looks as though I've had a look next door. It's the same sort of layout of a building. There's probably one set of stairs. Once you found stuff, and it's this. I needed to, it's the training scars. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, sorry, I interrupted you, but we're like fucking 10 years behind you, bashing our head against some of these walls.
Well, to be fair, there's probably a Swedish department still doing that, and there's a lot of things where you expect them to do on the fireground. You expect them to do one thing, which is not to follow the walls, but on the training you follow the walls because that's how you do training. It's sort of it's not even it's people even know that that's a problem, but the training is sort of like, oh, we don't have a real fire, you're going to crawl down the basement. If they just go straight to whatever fire doesn't exist because there's no flow to follow, the training is over in 3 minutes, and there's so many things that they haven't thought through. So we'll just keep.
I need to see you do the thing so I can tick it off on the list, so I know you can do the thing. So I know there's nothing there, but just do the thing, and you're like.
But it's like when I started realizing like that's where you want to go straight to the fire because you want to have that knockdown so fast, because the goal is to go to ventilation. I mean, when I started doing my the rabbit hole down the track, ventilation was such of course an open, and everybody in Sweden was doing it. Not everybody, but a lot of people doing offensive ventilation or a PPA. Yeah. Doing putting a fan on, moving in with your back, and I was surprised because we hear stories like people going, "Oh, it's excellent, it's the best thing ever," and then see people going, "No, it's the worst thing ever." Like, how could it be so? And in theory, it all looked so easy when people explain it to me, like, "Oh, you just put the high pressure behind you, push everything out on that side, everything's going to be okay." And I realized that no, that's we can go down that route too, but that's not a way to do it. There's too many factors I can't control, and if I can't control the factors, I'm basically gambling. But if I just go to the fire anyway, in an apartment, it takes 30 seconds, a minute at most, from the front door to the fire compartment. Put some water on it. Now it's not PPA anymore; it's just PPV. It's just that I want to get to PPV as fast as possible. Yeah. Because I know that ventilation is the first it's the most important step for rescue. Now it's important for property conservation, it's important for firefighter safety also, but that's the fastest way to go to rescue. Because searching for people takes way too long.
Especially when it's full of smoke. You say, increased survivability, increased visibility. So in the UK, there are some services that are doing phase 3. So, going straight in PPA. Most have reverted, and I'll say this, I'm sure people tell me I'm wrong. A lot of people have reverted back to phase 1. So once the fire's out, once they've already, and then it's a bit, we're just clearing smoke from a building we've already put it out. Because the argument for phase 2, which is, you're at the source of fire, but you don't know it's the only source of fire there, Lars. So what about if we're pushing all of this hot gases and unburned products of combustion into other areas of the building? What if another fire starts somewhere else? And we have lost a few buildings doing that, certainly in the services that I've worked with. And people are scared to death of being that person that's pushed all them hot gases into the loft, and then you see it break through the roof and the firefighters aren't where they thought they were. And like you say, it needs to be layered with proficiency and speed. Yeah. That sort of aggressive attack, that aggressive advancement through the compartment needs to be an essential component to this, because you can't just put it on and then start sweeping and stamping and fucking about hugging the wall and takes you fucking 5 minutes to get there. Yeah, at which point you probably shouldn't have done that. But that's not to say that the thing was wrong. It's to say that you took so fucking long to get to the compartment.
Yeah. No, it all ties together. That's why I also have a problem with, like the UK and a lot of countries where you have basically silo training. Oh, we do BA, we do ventilation, we do fire suppression. Go like, no, you can't silo it like that. Everything is entirely linked to each other.
Yeah.
Like there has to be such a clear thread. Like you can't have BA training where you learn to stand and walk like this, and you have fire behavior training go like, no, down to the ground. Like that doesn't make any sense, of course. But like I said, if you go straight to the fire, typically that's a minute process in apartments and everything, because it's so fast. Just go, you get some water on it, you start to ventilate. Now everything starts to get better. Now, if you burn our houses, okay, what's your priority? It's rescue. Okay, so we use the fan until we don't need the fan for rescue anymore. Okay, now we can put the fan off because we don't want the fan for fire for
potentially feeding the fire. Yeah,
potentially feeding fire, like in void spaces and going up to the attic. If because we've had the exact same problem in Sweden. Officers were going, oh, but we can't use the fan because we're going to make the fire in the attic worse, for instance. And I go like, okay, so do you care about the attic when there's people to save? Of course not. But they haven't made that mental loop. So they continue going to training. They go like, no, we can't use the fan because to make the fire in the attic worse. Go like, no, you haven't finished that thought process.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't care about the attic unless I'm pushing fire to a different part of the building, then that would be a rescue problem somewhere else or something. Of course, that's but if your argument is, oh, we're going to push it into void spaces and cavities, go like, fuck, I don't care about that. Then you've missed the opportunity for rescue and so on. So I think that a lot of departments and a lot of officers haven't forced to do that mental arithmetic of what are my actual priorities. So I don't care if someone burns down the building. It's the same argument when we talk about straight streams and the fog and using little water and also the same thing. We've been for ages using as little water as possible. It's been the stamp of being a good firefighter, not having water on the floor. And you go like, is that the best for rescue? You go like, yeah, maybe. No, it's not. It's simply not. So do we care about water damages if there's a rescue? No, we don't. Okay, so drown the place if we can and so on.
That's very much more the American model, isn't it? The Americans tend to empty the bays that sounds harsh. From some training videos that you see, there seems to be a heavy focus on a large volume of water versus Swedish or European, UK methods.
Oh, for sure. But to be fair, I don't think their reasoning for it. I think they just ended up lucky. As a whole, there always individuals, but I think that they ended up lucky. But and from experience wise, knowing that it works. But yeah, for in that perspective, they were absolutely right in my opinion. Okay. Now they need to. I'm grossly generalizing here.
I know. It's hard. We'll fail at every turn.
They need to switch over to property conservation when that's the mode they're in, and that's the part where you shouldn't drown the building, and punch big holes in it and so on. So, but for the rescue part, I made the switch mentally. Started maybe switching 10 years ago, but we're not at all ready to make sure that everyone else is switching. But 5 years ago, maybe I made the mental switch that this is the path to go. You want, for rescue, you want massive amount of water. And you want water everywhere. And there's I don't see really a logical argument against it. Yeah.
Some people will give the argument of, as we do boundary call, and this is the thing when we train in containers, isn't it? You train in containers, the fourth wear in there, whatever. The containers got very hot, the barriers are extraordinarily hot. They're all active as pushing it back into the room, and you hit them with water, and people go, "Oh, you any idea that 1 liter of water turns into 1,500 liters of steam and all this shit?" And they go, "You just poached everybody in the room. Well done. You failed." And that discourages people then from a high volume of water because they get discouraged in that capacity.
Yeah, and it's partly a training scar, but I mean, I'm not saying that this was easy because it took research and thinking and so on to sort of, for me to get over it. When you're in the container with hot walls, first off, you want to cool the walls because that's the ones who's giving off the pyrolysis gases and radiation coming from the walls are a huge part of radiant feedback to the fire and so on. So you want to cool the walls. If you mentally do it in perfect world, you do gas cooling in the European sense, you do short pulses and fine water mist, and you only cool the smoke. Sure, you cool the smoke and maybe made it non-combustible, and you produce a very small amount of steam, and steam stays high because the smoke layer contracts, and steam is also lighter than air, so steam rises to the top of the compartment. Fine. But you still have a super toxic environment, and the radiant heat from the walls keep going, and the pyrolysis keeps going. So have you made yourself very safe? Not very super safe, I would say. And
for a very, very small window of time, yeah.
Yeah, and also,
yeah.
Like if you work in a flow, that's an extremely short period of time. But let's say the smoke layer stands still. This is just in a room with a smoke standing still. There's no flow anyway. So you just mix it with steam. Now you made it safer, maybe not safe. You made it better for the victim. Sure, you're keeping it high, but there's tons of toxic gases coming from the materials. There's tons of radiant heat coming. It's not a friendly environment. Everybody who knows has been inside a fire doesn't know it's not really good without a BA or PP. Now, but the problem with training then is that when you start to apply fog in a container, the over applying of fog becomes super sucky for victims and for us, of course, because you put a little bit of water on the walls, which would be good for reducing temperature of the wall, good for reducing pyrolysis, but you produce an ungodly amount of steam. So you cook yourself and people, and every firefighter knows that that's a sucky environment. And we, of course, correctly assume that would be sucky for people too. Mm-hmm. So we say that if you over apply water, that's going to be bad for everyone. Mm-hmm. Now, if you get on the other side of the loop, there's like a bell curve. If you use a little bit of water and then you use it's good. If you use in the medium, it sucks big time. But then if you go over that curve and you just start over applying water to the point where you cool the walls down so fast and so much water that it never vaporizes to steam anyway. It's just hot water flowing over the surfaces. Now you cool the surfaces, you splash water around, so you cool indirectly. You cool the smoke too. You get smoke cooling also. But you also end up in an environment with potentially less steam, less toxic gases, and better for the victims, better for you, in just a simpler, pragmatic way. So you have this bell curve. I think that you just have to push through. If you go to a container, you go like, oh, you put too much water on steam. Put too much water on the walls. No, you didn't put enough. Like you're caught in the sucky middle part. Yeah. You just have to go all over the way. You just have to switch up more.
I always think of it like snowboarding. You've got to fully lean into it if you've ever been snowboarding. Yeah. If you just do a little bit, you fall over. And then you go, oh, no, that was the wrong thing to do. I shouldn't lean any further. I'm definitely going to fall over. But if you don't do it, I also think the same. I've rode motorbikes for many years. You really do need to lean into it. If you don't lean into the corner enough, you will fucking crash. You know, I've crashed a couple of times because you've got to really commit to it, haven't you? Yeah. You can't just tap it and then get scared and then go, fucking hell, I won't do that again, because then that will reinforce that cyclic self-perpetuating belief that this is the wrong thing to do. Look, I did a little bit of it. Look how bad it was. God, imagine how bad it would be if I did a lot.
Yeah, I think that, and I fully appreciate that for most instructors and firefighters, it's a reasonable, logical conclusion to make. If I use too much water, it's going to suck, because that's what happens. But the reality is, to go all the way on the other side is probably brighter on the other side. Now, you could go anecdotally. We know that's true because the Americans have been doing it for ages in both containers and in concrete buildings, concrete training buildings, and in houses. So we know that. We know from the science, and we know from the experience of scientists that, hey, fog streaming is really hot. Yeah, straight streams are cool. I know it from burning tons of houses. It just makes the environment much better than fog. Fog is just nasty to be in. Like even if you do it sort of almost perfect, which nobody does, because then you have the issues of flow and knowing.
I was about to say that's a big pushback from the UK that people don't really realise, because we talk about this Swedish method and blah blah blah. Our infrastructure doesn't really provide the level of flow and pressure across the UK to even achieve the thing that we think we're trying to achieve sustainably. So, and we don't even use flow meters on a lot of our branches and trucks. So it's like you don't really know what you're doing.
No, I think that the level of, there's just issues with the straight stream gas going through, but the first step I had was realizing, and I think that's at least the minimum level, all the things I wasn't taught to understand with fog cooling, like how you move air around, how the droplets push smoke around, how they don't interact with each other until they get around. Like you have these misconceptions from books that you throw some water droplets in there and the droplets just going to go straight into smoke and they're going to mix. No, you can't just throw thousands and thousands of droplets in there and expect the smoke to stay the same. No, it will be pushed around and outward and everything. And again, to be fair, when I didn't really pay attention to it. The Americans said things that made no sense because generally the Americans had zero understanding of what the straight streams were doing and how flow was moving everything. They know some bits and pieces by experience. It wasn't until thermal imagers became good enough that you can see flows in zero visibility. That's for me was the game changer. Because I started seeing when I knew what to look for, which I didn't know in the beginning. But when I started looking at what happens when I flow here and sitting in acquired structure burns, especially seeing it over and over and over again, what happens if you do a fog here, straight stream here, fog here, and you see those flows. Okay, the students did a fog in the top part of the compartment. You can see the heat being pushed down to the sides and back against the firefighter and get hot. You can see that if you didn't have a thermal imager. You just felt it get hot.
You're trying to describe a feeling, aren't you? You're not really. Yeah. You're resting on one sense, which is very personal and their own impression of what It's like trying to describe the wind to somebody with your eyes closed, and you can't point at the trees and go, "Look how hard it's blowing." You just go, "Hey, what did you feel that then?" And they're like, "I felt something. I mean, what was I supposed to feel? Oh, it doesn't matter. We'll do it again." But versus, when you then get the revolution of thermal imaging cameras and you can see the dissipation of things, the convection, the currents, and how it moves through that body of air, that's fascinating. And again, we will reference a few people because a bunch of your instructional videos really articulate that nicely and the describing you've done alongside it as well.
Yeah, and I like when I do this, I have so much content I should post. But I collect this short snippets of things in the training environment when you acquire structure bursts and so on. Go like this really highlights this, and this really highlights this aspect of it. And when you paint that picture, it sometimes you can cherry pick, and I try not to cherry pick like, oh, this is a thing I want to show, because I'm definitely guilty of that. But when I look at all the bits and pieces, they form what I think a picture. That points in a clear direction. That you have to, if you're going to do fog, for instance, you have to be aware of all those things: how you move air, where the droplets are going, do they hit the surface or not, where are the surfaces, where are doorways. In practice, I don't even know how to do that because I can't. It would be a very, very, very slow procedure. Because you have to move into a room, you have to go like, okay, how big is the room? What's my nozzle setting? Okay, how big is it a doorway in front of me? So if I use the fog in that direction, I'm going to pressurize the room in front of me. It's going to push everything that way.
Yeah.
Is there something to that side? Can I do a sweep or should I do pulsing? How long is it? How long will I flow? What's the appropriate? Go like, there's so many. Go like, no, that's not even possible in theory because we don't even know that. Yeah. Like in practices, if you just go straight to, now you're done.
Yeah.
And also I went in, and this was really early when I started doing training, because I was, by then, especially, plus 10 years ago, I was fully convinced that fog was, of course better. Straight stream didn't even work, let alone being superior. So I was trying to make videos that made fog look good.
Superior.
Because I needed training material to teach fog, because there was only like bad pictures in books and videos out in the parking lot. I wanted real videos with thermal imager and see everything. And I am surprised in hindsight how long I tried to make it work, even though I saw with my eyes that it didn't.
Wow.
Like I had to set it, because I was doing public relationship videos. That was the same thing.
Okay.
I get a job. I want to show how the effectiveness of this and this, fire blanket on a pot, whatever. I do that. And I take a acquired structure and I make a pot fire, So I'm trying to set up something that looks like it's very good, because we want to show something to the public that this is very good. And that was part of when I started realizing, some of those things I'm trying to create are not accurate. I'm just trying to make them look accurate. But I didn't really make that connection to firefighting because I was theoretically convinced that fog was the right way to go. So I was trying to make the practical case of making those training videos, but I was constantly messing up. Though one thing was the first big part is that nobody of the instructors that came in could do it properly.
Right. So maybe it was said, "Oh, it's fine, Lars. I'll show you. You know, just set it up and I'll take you in and show you." Well, I know it didn't really work that time, but you know, that was a bit of ABC X Y Z. You know, maybe oh shit, right? Okay, well, it's okay. I'll ask somebody else. You know, and then they couldn't do it, and they can do it. Okay.
It was nobody could do, and again, in hindsight, go like, yeah, that was an indicator that it's too hard in practice. Like that's a good indicator. If the instructors can't do it, the firefighters can't do it, or they shouldn't.
Yeah. And
that took a long time for me to realize that we're not at anywhere close to the proficiency needed to be a good fog cooler in that sense. But I was trying to make it work. So I was trying to make instruction. And we were drilling before. With the nozzles, like without a fire. And then you put a fire in there and smoke. And then they go in and do the same thing again. And still they couldn't perform to the level of the right cone angle for that space and see what happens and so on. It was still like half suck. So the materials are going to go, oh, do like this, but in this environment, do a little bit longer. Or do like this, but think about this and this. You have to do a little bit more often because the bounce back comes back and so on. So you always have to have videos where you have to make a caveat and like do it sort of like this. Yeah. And I couldn't get it. And then I was starting to realize I am trying to make the reality fit my theoretical model.
Yes. That's a really good point for investigation, isn't it? When people try and bend a theory to fit the facts. Yeah. Yeah. And
then I started, but if the practice doesn't match my theory, there has to be something wrong with my theory. Like, what am I not understanding? And that's where one of the big puzzle hit me. It was the transition attack study in the USA, in the UL dud. So that was a transitional study, but it was a straight stream to a window, and it showed how it cooled an environment, and if done correctly, didn't push fire and so on. And I was going like, oh, excellent! Now we could do a transitional attack study, transitional attack, because it wasn't forbidden in Swedish fire service, but we never did it because all fire training was done from basically the entry door and in. Yes, it was never part of training, so you could do it. And people knew that, and, you know, if you do it with firefighters inside, it could be bad and so on. So we had those experiences, but it was never trained on. So people don't do it if you're trained on. So the first, of course, was we need to implement of course, exterior attacks with straight streams in training. But then it took me a couple more years before I said, okay, but if a straight stream works from the outside, why doesn't it work from the inside? The question was not, will it work from the inside? It was, why doesn't it work from the inside? Because I was still convinced that straight streams for interior firefighting doesn't even work. They're useless. Yeah. You're just shooting water through the gases, which you want to cool, hitting the surface bounces off, big droplets fall through the smoke, nothing happens. Sucks. So I had to, again, my theory about interior firefighting, and then I start, of course, tweaking that too. But if it worked from the outside, it has to work from the inside. Yeah. It's not better than fog, but it has to work. It has to actually cool the space down because it does from the outside. Like water doesn't know what it's coming from in that sense, but it does because there's velocity and mechanical forces. But that's where first my theoretical model started to take a hit. Right. Because now it opened up the Pandora's box towards how does it cool? Where does it cool? What's the relationship with boundaries and linings and gases and how mechanically it moves air around. So that was the Pandora's box. And after that, it really just went from, okay, now I need to find a new theoretical model for how to explain it. And that how much did you find that frustrate everyone around you as well, though? Because them wanting you to just leave it alone. You know, I don't know if you had much of that, of people saying, look, Lars, look, mate, this has been it like this since before you joined. All right, no one needs you to come and save firefighting. But you're like, I'm not saying I'm special. I'm just saying, can you see what I'm doing? Because you see this. You see that help me understand what I'm doing wrong then. Because you've all done it with me. Why do we keep saying this? Well, I mean, I had started my instructional journey then, and I started to think about how to become a better instructor, which is basically being a salesperson for ideas, which is hardest thing you can do. It's
Yeah.
your instructor. If you be no, you can be two types of instructor. You can be a facilitator of ideas that are already accepted, which is the easy part. We all accept this to be right. Let's just help you train on it.
Yeah.
So, but the other part of being an instructor is always of selling something new. You want to have a behavior shift, and that's all I do. I mean, I don't even do recruit training. I've never done a recruit training in my life.
Okay.
I have theoretical. I don't do. I only teach senior instructors, which is my bias. I mean, I go around the world, teaching fire.
Yeah. Although, there's two arguments to that, isn't there? One is you're going to potentially have to do that forever, which is not a bad thing, because unless you go to the source and change it at the source, they'll keep picking up the things that go through. And also, I find, I train a lot of recruits. They are much more open to anything you're going to say. As long as you can take them from where they are to where they're not, give them a logical path through the fog mentally from something they can conceptually already understand. Like when you talk about physics, easy things about, fans and pouring water and straws and all of how physics works. And then you can take them to the things they don't know, but in a path that you have learned through the fallacy of the way that we thought it used to be done and never has been done. Whereas if you work with senior firefighters, part of your process has to unpick the stitches as well to gently coerce them away from a belief.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and I think that's where that's what I put my effort into. Again, exactly like you said, I have to start where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's again where I come in. And I usually tell them about my journey. I take them to the crash course of my journey. I realized I was doing it this way, and I jumped through the logical hoops, which I've constructed in hindsight, about where did I need to go to the place where I think the rationalize. And basically, if I do my work correctly, I end up with firefighters going, I can't argue with Lars.
Yeah.
I can't. It seems like a logical path. I can't pick holes in it. So now I have to start making that mental switch, which will take years, because it takes years for me. It is hard, but you can't disregard it instantly. And again, that's where my experience come from teaching. I have to start with basically how can I make it as fast as possible from whatever state of mind they're in, whatever and I always start with misconceptions, because I don't confirm all things they already know. Mostly that's useless from where I teach or what I do. I have to start where I think they are. What's the worldview on the theory of how the world works that way it should, and I take them from there to wherever I want them to go, which is different for different cultures. If I go to Germany, I teach differently. If I go to the UK, I would teach differently. The goal is mostly the same,
but they're starting somewhere different.
There is vastly different.
Yeah.
And if I were to teaching recruits is a whole different animal, I would presume that I would be a fairly bad instructor for recruits.
Really?
Because the further you get from where they are, the harder it is to teach them. Things I take for granted are not for granted for them.
Yes. But I would also argue, like, when you fully... I love... there's a guy called Professor Brian Cox. Don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a UK astrologist, I think. He could explain astronomy to my daughter because he's so fucking good. He's so articulate, and he knows the subject. Neil deGrasse Tyson's another great example, and I'm sure he's not perfect.
But they've dedicated their life to sort of explain it to laymen.
Yes, they translate it so beautifully.
Yeah. I have not dedicated my life is the right word, but I have focused on pushing my own understanding further and taking others people that are in the same trajectory, but maybe alongside me or before me after, and making that conversation. It is too centric on having a worldview that's basically a European or American.
I was just thinking the same when I used to coach people. I used to run a few gyms many years ago. Like, you're either good at taking people from step 1 to 5, like people that are really poorly in physical, mental shape, and then getting them to be a functioning human being. But working with professional athletes, taking somebody from 94 to 98 is a very different journey and a whole different teaching methodology. And there's so many assumes and things you don't have to fuck about with versus someone that's just trying to get from step 1 to 5. Do you know what I mean? So it is a very different path, a very different tool set, and I absolutely agree with you. I was terrible at pulling you away from the gas rig aspect. So just take me back to the proliferation and people encouraging people to utilize thermal imaging cameras a lot more. A lot of these are standard on most appliances, pretty much across the world, to my limited understanding, or certainly in Europe, they're very commonplace. The use of them and the encouragement for flow path identification and using that as a method of obviously getting to the seat of the fire is something we look to promote a lot more. That's something you can still simulate with gas rigs. Do you think that is reliable for something like that? I know you don't get the relationship with the smoke behavior in the same capacity, but if you have the ability to light fires in different rooms, you can still do some flow path training. Or am I stretching a bit too much there?
So gas props and thermal imagers. Now, thermal image work by reading radiation, right? And radiation from a specific spectrum. And the spectrum is basically the ones coming off solid materials mostly. Mm-hmm. So a thermal image can't really see gases. Now, some gases you could see with a thermal imager. So you need particles or liquids, basically. From a fire, like the actual flame, you can see in thermal imagery because the flame contains a lot of particles, a lot of soot and everything. Even from a propane flame, it will break down into soot particles inside the flame. So you will see the flame even come from propane. So the actual flame you can see. Now that doesn't help you a lot in training because if you see the flame, you can just put water on it with your naked eyes because you don't have any smoke because the propylene smoke is already gone. So that's a non-issue. So it's okay finding the way to the fire. Now you just have hot air coming from the fire. Basically, you have water vapor. You have CO2, which is the main part, and nitrogen. So you have you have gases coming from the fire. Now, some distance after the fire, you would get down in temperature. A lot of that water vapor created by the fire will condense back into droplets. Tiny droplets. That's what we call in the white stuff we see sometimes is steam. Now you don't have that amount of much from the fire, so you don't get a steam cloud inside of the container. So you don't really see you don't see the condensed droplets. So there's nothing really to follow with the gaseous fire at all. You typically don't see unless you come very close. Maybe
I was about to say if you're about one compartment away, you can see a bit of it coming through a door, but by that point, you're not going to have followed that flow path then from the fucking entry point because you're probably two or three compartments deep press. Now. Yeah. It's a tenuous thread to try and pull that.
You could probably increase that by having a sprinkler system or something. Just putting water on the fire, on the propane fire. You will make it burn less well. You would get it to smoke more, so you get around.
You're right.
Around the environment,
making it a dirtier burn to allow something to travel. Burn,
yeah. But also you're making it more water. So you're adding not just the water created by the propane, which is the end of the combustion cycle chemistry. You're adding water that you vaporize up into the plume, and that condenses more, and you see those condensing droplets back into water. So you could probably. I typically do it, but because I don't like propane facilities. But you probably enhance that with water, both by making a little bit more dirty burn to the extent you can or allowed to, and just adding more steam into the smoke to get it visually seen more. Otherwise, it's just particles. If I were to have it, you have to have some particles up there, and you can probably have dust. Like you could build a dust machine. A fan and dust machine, so you push dust into the cloud, into the plume. Some part of it from the fire, you put up dust or whatever, that's physically dirty but not chemically dirty or cancerogenic, to probably enhance whatever to sort of get a visual that looks like the thermal imager, something that moves, which you want. You can put some dust in from fire department out in the corridor outside. You can put another dust machine from the corridor, spraying it further down the corridor so you can see it further away. Now then there's just something moving. Will it have the same temperature as fire? No, but it's something moving, so maybe it's better than nothing. So they say it sucks less than it would. But it won't be good, but it sucks less. It's less shitty. Because that is part of following the flow, but it's not, because that's just one part of it. Now, if you're a Methodist, you're going to go to the fire as fast as possible. Of course, that's a very important. You want to do orientation, which you can in theatrical smoke, no problem at all. It goes well. And you have some dust machine or steam coming, you get something to follow to fire. Good, you have two objectives. But you won't get when is it time to cool or not? You know, when should I do this? When should I retreat or not? Am I being effective? How long is the cooling lasting? All those assessments you need to be able to do basically risk assessment for your advance. Because if the firefighters are advancing and they start seeing basically colorization in the thermal imager, if you have a FLIR or a NFPA new graded, you will see colorization around 100 and 150 degrees Celsius. It's basically time to start cooling. And when you start cooling, how is that affecting? Is my cooling being effective in the sense that I cool and it stays cool? Or is it basically coming back all the time because you're in a flow? Now I need to cool more often or even entirely. Or if it's all the way up to red, if it's 300, 400, 500, 600 degrees Celsius above my head, maybe I have to cool all the time because I need to condense. If I'm cooling, it's not enough that I cool the smoke down. I also have to condense the steam. So if I get to that point where I see I need to cool more, not just a small burst to just basically verify that I'm being effective, I need to really start to cool. Now I need to cool excessively, and you never get those with a gas prop. So you're missing, I would say 70% of whatever you're looking for, and the whole risk assessment part. Which is why I don't understand how senior officials can go like, oh, we're going to do fire training, but we're not going to train on the most essential part for keeping our firefighters safe, which is risk assessment of our cooling interior.
Yeah, the effect of what you're actually doing.
That's the whole part. Now, one part of my wife needed her AirPods. So one part of that is I don't understand, but I think that the instructors have been so bad at supplying the ammunition for the senior officials of why do we need this?
Okay.
Why do we need, for instance, carbonation smoke, even though that is cancerous and makes our neighbors unhappy?
Yeah, that's the argument as well.
Yeah.
In the densely populated areas of the UK.
Yeah. And if our neighbors get angry, well, move the training field outside of the densely populated set, then we have to take 1 day off and go to training. I would rather take a day off, go an entire day of training, and then come back rather than go 2 hours of training. Just do a full fire training day, or mix it up if you want to train on useless things. But if you want to train on fire, just do a fire training day. Or if you have to be in city, you can scrub the smoke or wash the smoke in some sense. It's never cheap. There's different advantages and so on, different systems, but it's possible. And for cancer, again, it's about procedures. You have specific training gear. You wash it. You're wearing your decon. I'm perfectly fine to say I don't think it's a health problem in that sense. Again, I wouldn't be an instructor if I wouldn't.
So when we look at facilities in the UK, like the Fire Service College, they don't have any gas rigs, I don't believe, to my limited understanding. I've been there several times in the last year. There's a lot of pushback.
Before that, if you have a lot of carbonation facilities and you use a propane as a complement to do specific things, maybe. If you only have a gas prop, I think it's horrible.
Yeah. Because that aspect it's a very, very fantastic resource that we have in the UK, but there's a lot of frustrations voiced by people in the way that they've had training delivered, sometimes when they've been there. I work with the college. I really enjoy being there. And I speak to a lot of people that, lecture there and whatnot. And I think it's a fantastic resource. My fear is that with a lot of other UK services and brigades creating their own training departments, and all of these training departments being gas rigs, and them justifying, well, we don't need to go there or wherever to do our training, well, we can do it all in-house. They're not delivering the same thing, is my frustration, even though it looks the same from the outside. It's a smoky building with some heat coming from it. What's your experience been like with the college? I know you've been over it a few times.
No, I've been to the NBAC, the National Breathing Apparatus Competition, with the great people there. Great training field. Would I build something a little bit different some places? Yeah, sure. I mean, there's always the room for development, I think. I constantly modify the things I want because my understanding changes. Love the fact that you can do carbonaceous because you can have those things, look at where is fire coming from. You can do all the risk assessment and so on. Now I haven't done any training myself, only watched. I watched the competition, and that was basically procedural training. You basically get points on. I'm not saying there's not a way to do training. You have to have some kind of rule book. But the procedures are based on basically national guidelines, and national guidelines are mostly just horrible in terms of how to implement them. They're great as a theoretical reference manual, sort of like these are the things you should look for, but there's no way in reality you can ever be able to look for them. Like they took, like the UK has a very prescriptive way, at least on paper, to respond. Like you have to follow these procedures, you have to do all these checks, you have to do blah 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 blah. And in that sense, I would say you're accepting other risks. Like time is a big risk factor. If it takes longer time to get in, for instance, not just that we're worse at effecting rescues and so on, you're just making the fire worse and make the building more likely to collapse and so on. So you're adding other risks, and that's not, I think, part of the risk assessment. It's always based off, okay, you have to watch this risk also before you get in. And there's no downside to that. Like it's expressed as this is only an upside in terms of risk. Now there's a downside in rescue, not talked about much at all. But let's say you have a door person, you have a breathing apparatus. So someone has to look at the board.
Yeah,
I think that's a horrible waste of resources. That person would do much more for the safety of the fire crew to be inside behind the fire crew, or maybe outside the hose line doing transition attack.
So we're talking about the aspect of telemetry and an entry control officer. What's the layout in Sweden and Germany? Do you guys still do manual boards? I apologize, I don't know.
Yeah, no, in Sweden at least. It's very few countries that have electric telemetry boards.
Okay.
UK is the only one that's massively adopted that one.
Why do you think? Is it just an acceptance that our firefighters aren't very good at monitoring their own air pressure? What's the argument in your mind?
I think UK is very like, there's been a case of one firefighter not monitoring their pressure, so let's implement a system where it's impossible to get around that.
Yeah.
And again, not taking into account, because to make that decision, if I were to stand on the fire ground without any procedures and say, okay, if I have two persons going inside, they're going to do a fire attack, and I have a commander outside doing command, for instance, and I have a pump operator. If I have a third person, which we have in Sweden, where do I want that person to do most for the safety of the crew and the effectiveness of the mission? Do I want them just to monitor one aspect, which is basically the air of the firefighters? Or do I want them to, for instance, doing door control, cooling the smoke behind them, do a transitional attack from the side, doing a vent enter search for rescue, so on? There's so many things I could do that could lower risk, but also achieve higher effectiveness of the mission, than just saying procedure-wise you have to be at the board just because one firefighter once didn't check their air and he died. Okay, but now you're introducing other risks by taking up resources to manage that risk. And I think it's a horribly wrong. Now in Sweden we have by law required a door person. They should be in charge of the BA crew. It's basically the same thing. It's a BA leader.
Okay.
They called. Now how it's implemented is a bit different, but over Sweden. But generally they're supposed to make sure that the retreat is safe, and they should be behind the firefighters. They control the door. They have a branch. They cool the smoke if needed. They can go inside and cool if they need. They can go around the building.
And they're under BA as well.
They're under BA. Yeah.
Can they? You're saying they can enter structurally as a firefighter, as a team of one?
The only time they would enter if they need it. For instance, if one of the firefighters gets sick, and they would go in and help.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically a mini RIT in that sense. RIT doesn't work, but that's another thing. It's a mini RIT, but it's also again for protecting the retreat path. They have a board in every fire truck in Sweden. There is a manual board where you can write down how much air they have and so on. But I teach never to take it out if it's just one crew, because there's too much stuff to do here. You are more needed doing other things
Oh, mate, our telemetry's even got more fucking complex. We've got these briefing sheets now in services where do you write everything on the fucking... Have you seen them? You write everything on the board, and then you have to write everything again on a piece of paper in the fucking rain. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but it is. Again, I think it's a typical example of you're looking at someone. If we implement it, it will be safer. Not looking at the opportunity cost, which is if we implement this somewhere else, would it be even safer? So it's a resource. It's a resource. We have one person who's dedicated just to doing that. That's a waste of resources, safety-wise and effective-wise. So I don't agree with it at all. And I think the UK has a lot of those. Like you can read on all the things the commander has to do when they arrive to a fire. If they were to actually do that, the fire would burn to the ground before they've done all that. And they would be stuck in analysis paralysis because every time they go through all that mental checklist of checking everything, the situation's changed, they have to do it again. They would never enter a building. No. And if I talk to UK firefighters, they go like, no, we never follow that even though we train on it. And that's a typical example of a system breakdown where the procedure and the rules are not built for reality. They're built for theoretical...
We're just playing pantomime when we go for the assessments.
Yes. And that's a broken system, which the UK system, I would say, is. I'm not saying other systems aren't broken also in different ways, but that's a part of the system where it's broken. When I teach command for fire, it is about those balances. You have to go in fast. That's just the bottom line. And you have to go, what's the minimum necessary things you have to do? And what can someone else do? Like, for instance, I teach a highly decentralized startup at the incident.
Okay.
I teach. So the first crew commander that arrives shouldn't worry about the fire. A firefighter should if the firefight goes out, they should look for fire. Can I do something about the fire? Pull a hose line, pull a vacuum extinguisher. I don't care as commander. I have known nothing about this more than you do as a firefighter. You can pick a tool, do something about it. Another firefighter should focus on basically smoke and evacuation and rescue. They should check the staircase. Do we have smoke there? Can I isolate the fire? Can I do this? Can I vent this staircase? And get that out of the way. I don't think about as commander. Too much to do. The pump operator, think about where should I put the car? Where should I put the resources? Where should I put all the tools and hose lines? And they verify that with commander. This is a whole different. But the point is, I quickly realized when I become a commander that I suck at this. There's too much. And the better I became at reading fire and so on, reading buildings, the worse of a commander I became in the sense that I can't do all these things. I just realized I suck at it. There's too much. I have to divide the mental load on more people, and we have more people. So give them autonomy. Give the firefighters autonomy in a certain boundary. You can do this, but you can't do that. You can't, for instance, as a firefighter go inside the building by yourself. No, you can't do that because there's a law telling you otherwise, blah, blah, blah. But you can't take a hose line and put it out from the outside. But you can't drag out the entire hose layout because I might want to move the truck. So you can only put out one donut roll, for instance. Like you put out this regulation saying that we can't hamper the incident. If I, as a commander, have now it said we should move the truck on the other side of the building with more information, I won't be able to move the truck. But the point is, I realized that the centralized model of crew command or incident command is not working. You have to decentralize, which is the same as in warfare.
I was going to say decentralized command is a big aspect of what Jocko Willink always speaks about, decentralized command and empowering people. And again, that's cycling back to earlier in our conversation. That's a fear for me with this hemorrhaging of skill sets now, lack of confidence and assertiveness on the incident ground, all of that falling on the shoulders of a commander who's maybe been in 3-4 years. And I think, fuck me, it's the blind leading the blind sometimes.
And the easiest one is then just to fall back on the procedures, and the procedures are...
And then blame the procedure if it doesn't work.
Super safe and not effective.
Yes.
So we end up being...
Super safe and not effective. That might be the title for this episode. It's a fucking great title, that is, brother.
But it is, even if you were to take away the effective part, you would still end up with I'm trading off apparent risk for unapparent risk. Like if I do more things on the outside that should be theoretically safe, checking if there's power in the building, checking if there's dangerous goods, and sounding the structural integrity of the building, doing a 360. I have to do all those things correctly, and I interview the landowners. And 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, BA team enters the building. Now it might be unsafe for them to do so. Because the building might actually collapse. So you're introducing other risks by letting it, not just being ineffective. And again, I think there was a realize I started playing just a little while ago. I started playing some strategic games on the computer again.
Okay.
Like old, like Warhammer, Warcraft and stuff like the old.
I used to play Warcraft. I used to play Red Alert, Command and Conquer. Did you used to play them?
Oh,
fucking! I love that shit. That was great.
So, but it was fun because I started playing them again, and I realized the same thing. Like I'm the commander here, and the computer's whipping my ass. Why is the computer whipping my ass? Because they can do multiple things at the same time, which I cannot. I cannot process at that speed. Yes. I am limited by the amount of processing power I have. The attention I have. I can have attention on this part of the map. And the fire, if I look at, for my problem with like reading fire and so on, if I look at fire behavior cues and so on, go like mental checklist and everything, I'm missing everything else. Like if I start talking to one person to interview them, I'm missing everything else. If I look at building construction, I'm missing everything else. I don't have the mental capacity to process everything. I don't have I can't be physically.
The cognitive horsepower is not there. None of us, and that's unreal. It's not a challenge you're laying down. None of us can really. No. It's the old aspect of multitasking. Nobody can multitask. You can task switch a little bit more effectively than others, but nobody can fucking multitask.
I can.
Okay. No, I'm fucking terrible.
But it is. That is that you think you can, but you can't. Like you're absolutely right. So, and I see this whole thing, and I. If you were to ask me maybe 5, 7, 8 years ago, I would think that I would have said more like that the crew commander can be enough cognitive brain power to effectively manage like 4 or 5 people. Mm-hmm. But now I'm like, no, not at all. That's a highly inefficient way of doing things. Like there's two. You have firefighters being inside. They have their domain. They should be able to take their own decision inside. You have someone standing at the pump. They should have their own decisions. Especially at the startup, you need to divide the different tasks. Someone has to look for fire. Someone has to look for rescue. So survivability. Because you're probably as a commander stuck with the interview process and seeing what happened. People inside the building. So you divide that mental load to different people and geographical positions. Because there's something in Sweden that's popular among command. A lot of command is theoretical, and that's why I don't like really command. Those that teach command doesn't know fire, because they a lot of times it becomes theoretical. And one of the things in theory, they go like, we have to have this shared situational awareness, which is just horse shit to me. Like it's never like it sounds awesome. And it sounds great to be able to achieve that, but it's anywhere near reality. Mm-hmm. Like if the firefighters inside, we don't have the same situational awareness. They can radio out something, their interpretation of the situation. Yes. And that's their words they're putting on it, their interpretation. I don't know if that interpretation is right. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to make my interpretation of their interpretation, unless we have very clearly defined what those words are and what they mean. So we have this interpretation on interpretations, and we have a time delay. So they make a report. They make an imprecise report, more or less imprecise, and it's a time delay for me if I'm going to make a decision for them inside, instead of them taking the decision themselves within the domain they have been authorized to have. Like for instance, I say, you can't go past the fire unless I know it. That's like, you can't do that, but you can do this, you can do this. That there's certain domains that you can do. And if you clearly define those, then you can have decentralized command in that sense. I don't need to know what they're doing because it makes no difference in certain aspects. Like if I start an incident to say, you should do a 360, sounds awesome. How many times is it possible to do the 360 before you enter? Like if it's a big apartment complex, like it's not reasonable. You should run around, it takes 10 minutes. You can drive around with your car first. No, but you can have someone being on the back side of the building maybe, that has partially situational awareness of that and looking for specific things. And you can have someone else doing here. And if they're going to radio everything they see, that would make a mess. They just have to know which parts is it absolutely critical that someone else knows about. Yeah. And of course, that should be the commander. Everything should fall to the commander. But it should only be the things that commander has to know to make a decision. If the firefighter runs out of the fire truck and sees a fire, up on the second floor, and they don't have an order for the incident commander or the crew commander to do anything specific. I want them to pick a tool and do something about the fire, because we're not going to save any fire for later. There's not, we're not. That's not a typical process we do.
Yeah.
So if I don't know anything better about how to deal with this incident, I'm just going to let them decide how to deal with this best, and they're authorized to do this. Now, if I have a different thing, I'm going to say stop doing that, and we're going to do this instead. That's my right. That's my obligation as commander. But it's their decision. It's their role of domain, and I can't focus on that. Now this is a mental. I know that America is partially. I don't really like a lot of their pre-assigned routines, because they're they're too descriptive. I have a goal. If I try to make ones, I make them goal oriented. Like, this is what you're supposed to achieve within those specific parameters. These are the barriers you can't pass on. They shouldn't be. Thou shalt always do this. You should always go to the second floor and do this. You should always be on the outside of the building and do this. Yeah. It might be.
Just tell me what you're trying to achieve, and then the how is the strategic is down to me. How I tactically try to implement that is up to me. Yeah.
Again, with a certain amount of how you can do whatever you like, but you can't stretch out 15 lines through the building, because I want to move a fire truck later and we don't have hours left. So I've set some limits on, for instance, certain hows, or you can if you arrive to an apartment fire and my job is to basically check the staircase. I want you to run as soon as the fire truck goes in park. I want to run to the staircase and see if there's smoke. If there's smoke, pull the smoke hatch at the bottom. If there's not a smoke hatch, I want to run up the staircase and I want you to open a window, and I want you to close the door to the fire compartment. Okay, if you can't close the door to the fire compartment, you can't run above the fire unless I know it, because that's a risk. But and also if it's an uncomplicated staircase, you can run up even if it's smoke filled. It's okay. But you can't run up if you can't isolate the door, or if it's a complicated staircase, means it's got larger landings and so on. There's a risk of orientation issues. So I set limits about what I expect you to do and what you can't do. But I don't know, because I can't make a decision. I can't make a decision if we're going to attack that fire unless I know it's smoke in the staircase. If it's got smoke in the staircase, that's my first priority. Like Mike Reich, who's, the staircase is the most important room in the residential building. I fully agree. All our resources should be on the staircase until the staircase is free. Then we can move on to the fire compartment.
Especially in the UK, and this is one thing that frustrates me. We just had a guy called Peter Apps on the podcast yesterday. He wrote a book called Show Me the Bodies. Don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Show Me the Bodies, How We Let Grenfell Happen. And the UK is one of only 3 countries where, at any height at all, it is not part of legislation that you have to have more than one staircase. So there's there's the UK, there's South Korea, and there's one other country that you only have to have one staircase. So, and that's what worries me even more, that we don't have a heightened focus on protecting the staircase, controlling the flow, pressurizing staircases, smoke curtains. Our training in that is quite poor, but it should be more important to us because we haven't got another fucking option. There's not another staircase. Yeah. But anyway,
Sweden has had the legislation. Everything above 8th floor has to have double staircases, because below 8 floors our aerials can reach the balcony and have a secondary means of egress. Now I don't like that rules either, but we didn't have the high-rise problem of above 8 floors, but we still have not prioritized the staircase to a large extent.
Really?
Yeah. No. Historically, it's been again because you train from the door in.
Yeah, this is it, isn't it? So we're like, fuck everything until I get to the door. Then I'll become a firefighter before I go inside. But until then, I'm just moving shit to the bridgehead.
Just preparations for the interior attack, which is not true. Like the interior attack is still a hallmark of it's the thing that we can do that nobody else can do really. Do the interior attack, and it's essential, but it doesn't mean that the other things are not important. They are. They are maybe 100%. More important. So we have this mind shift that the staircase, and again, as a commander, I don't have the mental capabilities of focusing on everything. I can't look at the building construction, the risk of structural collapse, look for power, ask questions and look for clues for dangerous goods. I can't look at the fire behavior and then look at the crew and look at who's going to do what. not anywhere near the mental capacity or the time to even tell everybody, even if I were to give the perfect plan. Which is great part of doing command training. One part is when I realized that there's a difference between making a plan and making the plan happen. It's just the two main categories.
The Chinese whispers and the communication of that plan. So many debriefs that you read, the bit where you see this is where it started to go wrong is miscommunication. Yeah. But if you've centered all of that decision-making capacity to one person, then you're increasing the risk of that failing to be effectively communicated to everyone that's going to implement that tactical plan. And that's the proxy. And also, nobody likes to be micromanaged. Do you know what I mean? No, just give me. I'm a firefighter, Lars. Give me some outline. Paint good for me, and then I will execute it with my own logic and risk assessment as I overcome these hazards as I meet them. But that also lies on a proficiency of a firefighter, which some people have grave concerns about, as we've alluded to today.
Yeah, but I think and I'd be accused of micromanaging on a different level, because if I write a specific how to do like my videos I do for Swedish Fire Service, I do it with training content, which is much longer and so on, and very descriptive. Like, this is how you should do a transition attack. This is how you should do nozzle work. And they go like, Lars, you're micromanaging. This is very detailed on how to do it exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to not micromanage, because I'm writing a package, and certain things are very how to, and the more detailed they are in how you should achieve something, with the goal overarching that, the more mental bandwidth you free up to be able to evaluate if this is appropriate right now.
Okay.
It's a difference between the guideline, which is sort of just help you, and the actual procedure, which you have to do, which is horrible. Procedures are generally horrible. Guidelines are generally good if they're not seen as procedures, which in terms of UK is the guideline says this. If you don't do this, you're going to be court-martialed. But no, then it's a procedure. Then I have to do it.
Yeah.
So if it's just a guideline saying that you should do this, because again, if I do it to a firefighter and I say this is the goal you have, this is the house and everything, that is a very detailed description of what you're supposed to do, but it's also gives a ton of room for self-determination in that, to decide what is the best tool to use, how I'm going to use it, where it is, and I also know that I can break this guideline if I feel it's necessary, as long as I can justify it. And I want to, as a commander, I realized for myself, because the more I learned about fire and everything, the more complicated it became as me as a commander. If I was thinking about more things, the more I knew, the more things I had to analyze. It just grew. Because I knew, I saw a video on YouTube, a firefighter died in a big storage. Now I have to think about XXXXX also. So it just grew onto me until I realized I need to make checklists for myself, mental checklists, and go and think about it in advance. Yeah. What are the most important things I should consider? These are must knows. These are nice. Someone smarter than me said, anything above 3 points is a wish list, not a to-do list.
I love that.
And writing wish lists for commander is really easy.
Yeah,
these are all the things you should consider. That's not helping. No. That's not helping at all. To-do lists are helpful. Okay, these 3 things you have to do. If your firefighters are not on air, they shouldn't be inside a burning building. Like there are some things that has to be done. And then you look at, okay, do I have to do this? Or could this be an individual? Like if you say managing air, does this have to be
that's
done?
A fucking great example. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. I don't need to be managing that.
No. Because if you take away a responsibility for a person and put it on someone else, you take away actually their own self-reliance, the drive to survive.
Mate, so we've had this in an example. I'll just give you a little example for that. Yeah. So we've got some training programs in the UK, which, so some of the fears of some of the debriefs that have happened on some large-scale incidents is that firefighters don't know what they're doing, and we need a legally rigid and testable way of showing that the firefighter does know the thing that we've shown them. So as an example, we've got a lot of online systems where you go on, an example, like you need to fully understand the signs and symptoms of a backdraft. So you have to demonstrate that by going on Lars's video that's on our system, and you have to tick the box to say you did it, and you can only do it through your login to say you did the thing. What that does is disempowers the crew commander, the sub officer, the watch manager, whatever, from knowing if Lars is proficient at reading a fire behavior. Because Lars can say, well, I've read the fucking thing, I've seen the video, and I've ticked the box. So legally, the service can say, if Lars died, well, we still gave him the training because he ticked the box to say he'd had the training. But me, as his watch manager, I can go, Lars is shit. Yeah, he is fucking dog shit. I wouldn't wear with him. Yeah, but he's ticked the box. But I can't then go, Lars, we need to do some more training because you're not quite getting this, brother. And, I'm seeing some of these behaviors. I don't think your logic system's there. But it disempowers the manager to go, I'll manage the proficiency of my crew because I know if they're good or if they're not good. You give me all the tools, like you said at the earlier, if someone just wants to be competent, which is a hair width away from being shit, then I can assess if they're competent or not. Yeah. And you put that responsibility on me. I should be in charge of the ability, the competency of my crew. Because also, if you then goes back and Lars dies at an incident and they say, Pete, you were Lars's manager, what's the crack? Was he any good? And I say, well, personally, I think he was shit, but he did everything you asked him to do. He watched all the videos. Do you know what I mean? And I'm probably, that might be a bad example, but...
No, but it's perfect. It's
okay.
Compliance, not actually looking at...
Yeah. You want to empower the person to go, like air management. Look, Lars, it's your job. You know what the low pressure warning whistle is. You know what your turnaround time should be and how to dynamically assess that as you're wearing throughout this. I'm going to leave that with you. And if you don't make it out of the building, that'll be a shame, but we'll deal with that at the time. That's a foreseeable risk, but we've significantly reduced that risk by testing you, by training you, and by making it very clear that, because one of our frustrations, and this becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, is like we're worried people are not checking their gauge checks enough. We're worried that their air management is poor. Yeah. Which adds for a reinforcement of our belief that we need to double down on telemetry because people aren't very good at it. But that's because they know you're their safety blanket. Yes. If you're not there as their safety blanket, it's fucking down to you. They'll do it. Of course they will. It's like micromanaging your kids. I've got this thing, right? My daughter, when she first went to high school, she got up late from school and my wife wasn't here. I was at home working from home. She got up late and she came, oh, Daddy, I'm late. Yeah? Dad, why didn't you get me up? Because you've got an alarm clock. We've bought you an alarm clock. I heard the alarm go off. I'm not going to come and get you up because you will learn more. And I'm not saying we should let firefighters die, but you will learn more by being late to school and feeling embarrassed and going, shit, I don't want to be late. Because of course you're going to get punished. Yeah, you're probably going to be, you're going to have detention at lunchtime. That's going to be shit. But then you'll learn. Does that kind of make sense?
Well, perfect. I mean, in a training center, of course you shouldn't let firefighters die. That's a good outcome, but it's like I wrote an article not long ago, but it was in defense for dangerous training. This was leading up to my started thinking about it. We had an international course with international participant. There was an instructor from another system who almost sprained his ankle because in the container system there was a 1 deciliter changing levels, and he was like, oh, you can't have that, someone can get hurt, and if someone get hurt, they're going to shut down training. Now, that specific reason, it's not important, but the point is that I started thinking about this, but if we don't have split levels and changes and stuff like that, on a real fire, they're not going to look for that. They're not. The firefighters are not going to be cautious about that. That's why you have a system of firefighters standing up, because they haven't been in a real environment enough. Because in a real environment, you can't see anything. You should be down because there's shitload of stuff on the floor that you can trip over. But in the training building, this is often smooth floors. It's not a problem to stand up in zero visibility. But you have these. So you have to. My argument: if you're a recruit, if your first time you go to a live fire event, and the instructor says, "Okay, you should wear a BA. There's holes to fall down. There's hot fire. If you use a branch the wrong way, you will get scolded. If there's fire in there, if there's fire in there, you get hurt if you don't put the fire out. If you take your BA off, you're gonna basically suffocate and die. So you have to do all the things we've taught you to do. Otherwise, you're gonna die in there." okay, nobody else is, if you're dying in there, well, I will try to get you out. I will try to monitor you and get you out, but it's your responsibility. They will go in there with a heightened self. I check my air.
This has just absolutely hit me like a train, because this is why rope and water. This is genuinely why rope and water have a higher focus on being competent, because, and I know it because when we teach the safe working height, we're like, I can't switch gravity off. No. If you fuck up there, I can't switch gravity off. You will fucking fall. Yeah. And also, like when we're doing swiftwater rescue training, I can't switch the river off. If you don't find the eddy, if you don't swim aggressively with purpose, the way I've shown you, you will get washed down the fucking river, and we'll come and get you at the bottom, assuming you don't fucking drown. But sorry, I know it's, I know, but that's the problem. We reduce all this risk, and it's like, well, of course they're going to be shit.
Yeah, and I think there's a happy medium. You shouldn't build a death facility.
No. Have you ever been to disaster? What's it in America? What's it called? Disaster City. I've never been there.
No.
Yeah, I think they do a lot of urban search and rescue training there, but it just sounds amazing. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's. I think you should the sense of the. If it was possible, if the sense of the recruit or the trainer is coming into the training field should be that of, if I don't perform well now, I will get hurt or even die.
Yes. At
least I will get hurt, because that puts the emphasis on you. It's not, the instructor is just there to coach you. They're just there to help you do the right things. They're not here to yourself to blanket. If you know there's a button that all the hatches go up, all the smoke outs, and boom, everything is clear. Every time you do a mistake, if I use my branch in the wrong way and so on. Of course, eventually, if you have telemetry, eventually you take all their survival instinct and put it in. It doesn't matter if I do it wrong, it's going to be a fine anyway. So you find that balance between where the instructors should build a system where they know that even if they fuck up, they won't seriously get injured. Of course, you build in safety procedures, but the sense for the student should be, if I fuck up, it's going to be bad. Like there's ideally should be a misconception about how dangerous it is. The students should feel that it's more dangerous than it is. It shouldn't be that. It's still the other way around. That the instructors come there and go like, "Oh, this is a perfectly safe. We have all these features here and there. You can do whatever you like. Don't be scared. We will take care of you." We're like, "No, fuck it. Your responsibility. We've drilled on all those things. If you fuck up here, you're gonna get hurt. Okay." Which is I think how it has to be. Not because we have too few instructors to make it safe. No. This is how it has to be. If you have more instructors, good. You can become more coaches, not more safety persons. That's not how you have more coaches.
This is so useful for me, mate, because I'm going through this. The place that I work at the minute, we're redesigning a training center. We're about to spend, it doesn't matter how much, but we're about to spend some money, a lot of money, on a new place. Yeah. And I'm trying to fight the argument for a carbonaceous rig. But one of the big pushbacks I'm getting from a certain station manager is always, it shouldn't be an accepted risk that people might get burnt in training. He says I'm not having that as an acceptable risk. People shouldn't come to training and worry about getting burnt. And my argument, and I'm trying to push back with the rope and the water stuff, I'm like, but they genuinely might fall off the fucking building. Yeah. Well, no, because we won't put them at risk until they're at a point where we're happy for them to be out there, outside of the collective protection on the rig, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but that's the same for BA. Like, we're not going to put them in there until they've shown a strong enough comprehensive understanding of fire behavior through some training videos, through some lectures, through some simulation, through some models and some demo rigs, which I'd love to talk to you about. I know I'm conscious of time, but there's always going to be a risk that they will get burnt. Well, there won't be if we just use gas and synthetic. Yeah, but that's not fucking real then, is it? Why don't you just do safe working at height, walking around the fucking car park? Yeah? Why don't we just do swift water in the swimming pool? In the in no fucking flowing water. Because it's not realistic.
No, it's not going to feel the same way. You're not going to feel the power of the water. No, it is. And I put it, you have to... One very important concept I think you have with it, there are no advantages and disadvantages. There are no unilateral advantages of anything. They're only trade-offs. With all the things.
No solutions, only trade-offs. That's what someone else said
yeah.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah, just, exactly. That's perfect. And this goes with risk. If you take away one risk, what other risk are we making worse and so on? If for Swiftwater go like, if we don't allow them to feel the actual power of the water, they're not going to understand why we want them to behave in a certain way, and the techniques they learn are not the same. They're not going to. It's the same with fire. If we don't allow them to see the things that are dangerous and feel the things that are dangerous in a controlled sense in training, they're not going to react to it in a favorable way in the real incident. It's
so true, because this is the one thing people are probably never going to experience in their day-to-day life. Like, there's drowning is very emotive. Falling off a building is you people are scared of heights, and they know that. They go up the Empire State Building, whatever, they go, fucking hell, I'm scared. Yeah, why? Because I might die. Yeah, you go into the sea and you get a riptide and you go, oh Jesus, that was really scary. Yeah, but there's no lifelike situations where we can really effectively simulate this, if not in our training departments, because people aren't going to get this experience anywhere else. So if we don't deliver that sense of urgency, that sense of importance about fully understanding this and creating realistic simulation for it, they're not going to get it anywhere else. And we will be setting them up to fail when they do experience it in real life.
Yeah, and the tragic thing is, but even if you build proper carbonaceous facilities, you're still so far off reality anyway. I mean, I try to build facilities that are, I think, more realistically teach the things I want to teach, but I'm still hampered by technology or budgets. But to have, like, if you sit in acquired structure burns, I am constantly surprised how fast things can go from handable to holy crap.
Really?
And that hasn't happened in training buildings because the fire doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It just stays there. There's no flashovers. There's no spreading the fire from one compartment to the other. There's no sudden increase of heat. It's just, I went into the fire compartment and that was hotter than outside. Sure. That is.
Yeah.
And you know, if I spray water on it, there's more. But the sense of, holy crap, this developed fast, that you get in real buildings, like when you do acquired structure burns. When you're sitting and watching, say, fire behavior in one room, and it starts getting to flash over, and then it just boom flashes over, and the next compartment goes from this is very nice, we have a good time, holy crap, there's fire everywhere.
Yeah.
In 2-3 seconds, this shift in things, and that you can't replicate that. But in carbonaceous buildings, we can build with a combination of, I typically build a combination of propane, carbonaceous, and flammable liquids to create something that comes closer to reality, in the sense that it can go from really good to really bad fast, zero visibility to zero visibility with a high heat fast, or good visibility to zero visibility really fast, because those things you have to train on. Otherwise, how are you going to recognize them? Sure, you can show videos of them, but that's not the same. To show them. So even if we go live fire, there's the things we can do or should try to do is still a very wide range, but at least you have some real smoke to start to look for in thermal imager, start to see. At least we have some, flames in the overhead that we can't see, for instance. Then you go like, oh, holy crap, it's hot in here. I can't see anything. Look at thermal image. Oh, there's fire above my head. You can create that with live fire. You see that? Because in one of my constant feedbacks from acquired structure burns, which I typically do in Sweden, is, oh crap, you can't see anything. And that's such a low bar of learning from a lot of professional firefighters. Because again, I do acquired structure burns, only professional firefighters and instructors. Okay, that was a surprise. You can't see anything, or I can't see where the fire is. Because in training building, you can always basically see where the fire is because you have some visibility at the floor. You can see it's over there, and you can use the fire as a light source to search the room and such idiotic things to teach firefighters. And you go to basically acquired structure burn without any synthetics, just wood, because all the buildings are rid of synthetics. We do synthetics burns too, because we don't have limitations like America, we can also do that. But typically, it's only just wood.
Okay.
And still, smoke to the ground, high heat, can't see anything. And people go like, why aren't you cooling? Because I can't see any fire. Go like, it's above your head.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting when I'm an instructor, I typically sit at the door. So there's a fire compartment. There's a door to the fire compartment. Students are outside. The other instructors or professional firefighters sitting outside looking, and they do maybe fire attacks or just looking at things. When I'm at the door, looking into the fire compartment or looking up towards the ceiling, I have zero idea if there's a fire in there or not, besides hearing it, because I can't see it. But if I take my thermal imagery up and go like, oh, holy crap, there's fire rolling out of the ceiling above all the students or the firefighters sitting there. I don't even know without thermal imagery. Besides,
it's that shift from obvious to oblivious, isn't it? Or oblivious to obvious.
Yeah. I go like, holy crap, we should maybe close the door or maybe tell us to start cooling. Because also the insulation from our gear and how we position ourselves, like I'm sitting behind the door, I'm shielded from radiation a lot of times. And our gear is so good that it takes, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds of that radiation coming to start to feel. So when I start to feel that, it's been rolling above my head without me knowing it for a long period of time. And those kind of revelations, that doesn't happen in a training building. People go like, oh, holy crap, this is different. And it shouldn't be. And if we go to gas-fired props, we have like a gas part. You go into a room and you start hearing the magnetic of the and then the pilot flames. And after a while, there's a flame coming in the ceiling. The firefighters standing there, so they can see their nozzle adjusting the pattern, and now it comes, and then they go inside. It's borderline theatrical. It's just an amusement park at that point. And I'm the first one who said, I think amusement parks are important because of recruitment. I think firefighters should have fun, but it shouldn't be contradictory to what their learning is.
Yeah. It should help them towards the logical path of learning that they eventually head to, not
There's
just
nothing wrong with having
exciting simulation. Yeah.
But it's borderline, and I don't see instructors giving senior command enough ammunition to do proper training. It's just bitching and moaning about we don't think this is good enough, and there's no proper documentation about what are the risks that we're trading off here.
That's a very, very good point, and somewhere perhaps I'd love to finish with, because I want to be respectful of your time, because I know we're closing on 3 hours. I could easily talk to you for another 3
today.
I've got to go and get my children at some point. So let's try and give some low-hanging fruit for people that are trying to construct an argument to their senior leadership team, as a position I'm in as well. Why do we need it? If I had to force you into a corner and say the argument for realistic carbonaceous rigs, and I know I would just say to people, look, go and listen to the conversation I had with Lars, but if they didn't want to spare 3 hours, I'd say, look, these are the salient points that you need to document with data to be able to argue that to your senior leadership team.
The easiest one, I mean, the sad part is that effectiveness is not part of the scope. Like no senior management is going to go, oh, that makes us more effective, because it can't measure it. So risk assessment is the primary thing you have to argument for. Then the bonus would be, of course, you can add effectiveness achievements or increases in effectiveness as a side note. But you have to lead with risk assessment. So you have to go like, okay, so if we go with a gas props, we're gonna see the reduced risk of cancer. We're going to see reduced risk of heat stress to instructors. We're going to see reduced cost for maybe maintenance or something. It depends on what system you buy and so on. But so you have to, of course, start with the upsides. That's going to reduce the risk of these areas: financial, environmental, health-wise. And then you, of course, on the other hand, you have to go, okay, what's the increased risk of ag gas? But yeah, firefighters don't know how to use their tech to do risk assessment. They don't know how to read sound for risk assessment. They're not going to be able to recognize their cooling being effective or not. They're not be able to do orientation towards the fire compartment. These are risks that will increase if we don't do carbonaceous, because we don't have a solution technically to deal with those. We need dirty smoke to achieve those, be able to do those risk assessments. And on top of that, so you should have this balance. These are the positives for trade risks. These are the negatives. And then you go, okay, so how do we manage those increases of risk? So with cancer, we manage it with good procedures, separate training gear, maybe have active carbon underwear to be able to mitigate that, or we reduce the time because we also implement this shifting method. We want to get them as fast as possible to the fire compartment. So the amount of time we spend in smoke before we actually start to ventilate is very small. Instead of doing right-hand, left-hand searches for 20 minutes inside the smoke. So we do the shifting method. But to be able to do this shifting method, we have to be very effective at using a thermal imager for orientation and knowing where to go and doing this risk assessment and knowing where can we ventilate or not. And that one part of knowing ventilation is, I think I've knocked the fire down, but I've done a risk assessment with a thermal imager. See, we don't have flows coming from other compartments. We don't have heat coming from other compartments. So that if a secondary fire, we can ventilate. So we decrease the time they spent in training and on actual fires in a cancerous environment from that point on. So we trade off. We accept some that, but it's only from wooden fuels to reduce the amount of exposure they get from real fires by making them more effective. So you could argue that you're doing less exposure by doing quick, proper fire attacks in carbonaceous than letting them do sloppy, bad real incidents in synthetic fuels. It's a trade-off.
Dude, I think that stuff is so useful, and we'll try and drag that into some sort of bullet point, some sort of accurate thing for people to be able to help build that argument. Because I think, like you say, coming at it from a risk assessment perspective really helps put it in the language. Because you can't just come from, like you've said, emotion and moaning and this isn't good enough. You are having conversations with people that need to base those decisions on data, on analytics, on some sort of, like you say, risk assessment or something like that. For people that want to learn a little bit more, because I'd love to have another conversation with you at some point. I know with the fullness of time, we're like 15 episodes sit on the hard drive waiting to come out now, so we're a little bit behind. Hence what my conversation to you, I was like, shit, dude, I'm sorry, I'm delaying it back to your life and stuff. But anyway, for people that want to understand more, we will link SwedishFirenerd.com. People can go there. There's stuff on digital training. There's wonderful blogs there, conversations with many, many, many incredible guests. I saw you one with Gerard very recently as well. Yeah. They can access a lot of this as well. Your YouTube channel, so at Swedish Fire Nerd. Awesome. There's 59, 60 or so. Some of the stuff you've done, lectures at conferences, some of the great conversations you have with people. If people want to find out opportunities to work with you, is it best to go through the website? How is the best way to reach you, would you prefer?
Prefer if you arrive to my house late in the evening with a beer.
And just paid me money. And I'll just talk at you.
And buy beer. Just email me or phone me for that matter if you... I do less training now because I don't want to be away from home that much. I have small kids, but I do training still and travel to do some training. But absolutely training. I do a lot of digital training, just instructor development. So it could be you do over a period of a year. You do different sessions about like instructor philosophy, how to build training centers, how to design training courses, and I give my thoughts on it, and they can shoot me just basically a whiteboard and throwing stuff at me and see what sticks, or I throw stuff at them. I also do consult on building buildings and stuff like that. So actually draw buildings, and in Sweden I also build them physically. Now I'm welding at my local department. Yeah,
so good man.
I'm welding and grinding and stuff like that, and I try to build, what I say, innovative training fields that work in the way I want them to work. Now that's building myself. I just started because I want to have that physical feedback of doing something rather than just sitting by the computer, and it teaches me a lot. So I'm doing that too. I know. So send me an email or call if you have questions, or I get tons of
Mate, I love that you're doing that. Being the eternal student, going into that next layer again of, there's also, like you say, that sense of achievement and accomplishment. I've made this. I've physically gone out there with my two hands. Because in the ever-evolving world of technology, and that's why I'm behind sometimes with the podcast. I mean, we release them every week, but I'm like, I like to go out and live as well, and I got to live and have my life and have my experiences. Otherwise, we'll all get stuck in the ethereal world of technology. But thank you so much for your time today, mate. I really want to, appreciate the fact that you've put 3 hours aside. You've obviously got a family and other responsibilities, so I'm going to free you to go back to those. But thanks so much for coming on, mate. I really appreciate your time, and I'd love to revisit a conversation in the future if we could.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. It was
beautiful.
Fun to have a conversation with you. The UK services is sort of like a black spot for me. It's very hard to get into and influence. So many good people in the UK, so I don't know why, but the system seems very rigid. This seems like
it's a tough cookie to crack. But are you over again in the UK at all anytime soon?
No plans for it. No, UK it's hard. A lot of people want me to come over, but it's failed on them not getting the right logistics and budgets and stuff like that, or it's because they don't find the support from their organizations.
That's often probably the sad truth sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
But hey, people can at least get a little bit of it here. And again, we will include the links for people to go out, because as we've alluded to earlier, if you want to develop yourself, 70-80% of that has got to be on you. It's your life. It's your development. It's your career. That's why they call it personal development. Yeah. So for people that want to find out more, get on the links in the bottom and go over and find out. Beautiful. Cool. Cheers, brother.
Have a good day, Pete. Have a good day. Bye.
The Firefighters podcast was created to recognize, acknowledge, inspire, and hopefully even motivate these incredible individuals who have chosen to be part of the first responder community. Our driving purpose is to create a legacy resource for the current and future generations of firefighters and first responders. We get some incredible feedback from listeners and guests, and as the podcast grows, our desire to create longevity and sustainability means that we are asking for the support of our listeners. If you want to support the podcast, if you want to get discounts to our merchandise, hoodies, clothing, coins, patches, and also access to all of the incredible documents that get shared with us from our podcast guests and sector leaders, then please head over to our Patreon page, and for just £3 a month, you can support the future of the podcast. Please finally hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on the platform you're listening, and wherever you're in the world, please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.